Previously on the Vampire Diaries.
She tells him, Damon, don't go there. And he's like, no, you just have to hear it once. I love you, Elena. And it's because I love you that I can't be selfish with you. And why you can't know this. And he compels her to forget while a tear rolls down his face. And then the whole scene disappears and Elena is left standing there like, oh, what was that? Mark my transition into a Delana guy here, guys. Woo.
Switching sides.
Oh. Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, Luke, and welcome back to another video. Or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Who's ready to transition into season 4? Little vampire pun there. Today's video is really exciting because it is a return to one of the longer standing series here on my channel where I do a deep dive and a recap of the Vampire Diaries.
Mystic Falls. I was born here. This is my home.
And mine.
And mine.
One of my favorite shows of all time. I've been watching it since it first started airing in 2009 when I was 9, and I rewatch it every single year. I'm obsessed with the show. It's everything to me. Within these videos, I do a deep dive into the characters and their relationships, the mythology in the show, as well as the plot holes. So much to dive into. If you have not seen all of my previous videos on the Vampire Diaries, I will link the playlist down below. I've done the first 3 seasons if you want to go ahead and watch them or rewatch them if you're, feeling like getting a refresh. But I'm just so happy you're here and so happy to dive on in to season 4 of the Vampire Diaries.
For centuries, supernatural creatures have lived among us.
They are vampires, werewolves, doppelgangers, witches.
And even hybrids.
And then there's me. I'm human. At least I was.
Some facts about season 4 is it is actually the longest season of the show, coming in at 23 episodes, because there is a bonus episode this season that is a backdoor pilot into the Vampire Diaries spin-off show, The Originals. Covers our original family, the first ever vampires, and I love The Originals so much. If you have not watched The Originals and you are a Vampire Diaries fan, I highly recommend. I am going to cover the backdoor pilot when we get to it later. You guys can let me know if you want me to cover it on my YouTube channel, because I think it would be a really fun, different take, but still within the same realm, Whereas the Vampire Diaries focuses a lot more on relationships, The Originals focuses a lot more on family. In terms of the timeline, season 4 ran on the CW network from October 11th, 2012 to May 16th, 2013. And the timeline within the show is that this season takes place from November 7th, 2010 to the 15th of June, 2011, which is roughly 7 months, which is one of the longer timelines we've had so far. I have so many fond memories watching season 4. It is such an adventurous season, probably the most adventurous season I think in the show. There are so many plot twists throughout the season, and it really takes us on a journey that I was not expecting. I feel like the writers knew how good season 2 and 3 were and how much reception they got, and this season they just wanted to go full balls to the wall. Like the mythology in the season, the way everything stacks on top of each other, there is so much going on. But before we get into it, I do want to give a brief explanation of the mind map. So starting off, we have the pictures of the characters. The size correlates to how big of a character they are within the story. So we have our 3 main characters, like our series regulars. Then we have our guest cast. Then we have our question marks, which are covering a bunch of characters that are yet to be introduced. We also have our X, which indicates deceased characters. You'll also notice that there are symbols on a bunch of the characters, and I have a key on the left side and the right side of the mind map. So we have this symbol for witches, this symbol for hunters, this symbol for ghosts, this symbol for hybrids, this symbol for vampires, this symbol for werewolves, and this symbol for doppelgangers. A lot of these symbols are from the cave in season 3 that the Originals created, but some of them are just ones that I've created because I just love symbols and maps. And finally, we come to our strings. So starting off with our blue strings, these indicate characters that are related to each other. We have our green line. This indicates characters that are in the same vampire sire line. And finally, probably our most complicated string is the red string, which indicates romantic relationships. So that is everything you need to know about the mind map. I will be giving context throughout the episodes when necessary, but I am going to give you a little refresh and recap on what happened at the end of season 3. So we ended off last season with Esther, the Original's mother, turning a lark into a vampire hunter who couldn't be killed with a weapon that couldn't be destroyed. She was able to do this by channeling a lark's dark alter ego because his psyche had been split in two from dying and coming back to life so many times with the Gilbert ring that brought him back to life from so many supernatural deaths. And Esther's whole purpose in doing this is that she's a witch who wants to restore the balance to nature and make amends to the spirits by ridding the world of vampires, since she's the one who created the species on accident because she was just trying to create a protection spell for her children. Esther used the same spell on her children on a lark, so he was just as strong as the originals, with the addition that he couldn't be killed by the one thing that could kill an original, a stake fashioned from the white oak tree she used in her vampire spell to turn her children into immortal vampires. The lark's mission from Esther was to kill the 4 remaining originals, because we learned last season that every vampire in the world is sired from the originals, and when one original dies, every vampire that is turned from their bloodline dies along with them. So essentially, if a lark killed the 4 remaining originals, it would rid the world of vampires and the species would become extinct. Therefore, Esther would be able to restore balance to the spirits and to nature. However, this was a problem for most of our crew who are vampires like Stefan, Damon, Caroline, Tyler, and even Bonnie's mom Abby, because they are all sired to one original. And if that original dies, then so do they. And they believe that original to be Klaus based on Klaus's word alone, but also based on them trying to track their bloodline. So in the episode before the finale, Bonnie intended to use dark magic to immobilize and then desiccate a lark by stopping his heart, since he couldn't be killed. However, while Elena was a lark's hostage, she threatened to kill herself based on a hunch that Esther used her blood in the spell to create a lark, and she wouldn't have been able to make a lark truly immortal, because that's what she did with her children. It defies the laws of nature and the spirits, and there would have had to been a way for him to die. And if it's not the white oak stake, Elena figures that Esther gave a lark a lifetime to kill the originals, so she thinks that Esther linked a lark's life to Elena so that when Elena died, a lark would die along with him. Klaus, who was there during this ordeal, kidnaps Elena so that he could use the rest of her blood to sire himself more of his vampire werewolf hybrid slaves, and in turn she would also die from blood loss, therefore killing a lark and solving Klaus's problem of his mother trying to kill him. When Damon and Stefan learn of this from a lark, they go to save Elena, and Bonnie then uses the dark magic spell that she was going to use on a lark on Klaus instead, and she stops his heart and desiccates him. And this is really smart because it solves 2 problems. It stops Klaus from being able to kill Elena, while also keeping him alive so that Bonnie's mother and all of her vampire friends can stay alive as well. Klaus's brother Elijah then makes a deal with Elena that if she gives Klaus's body over to him and his siblings, they won't wake him in Elena or even her children's lifetime, so that Elena can live out her long natural human life, and when she inevitably dies of natural causes, a lark will die along with her. And it was a pretty sweet deal until a lark exposed all of them to the Founders Council, which #1 purpose is to rid their town of vampires and other supernatural creatures. And a lark used the Founders Council's power and resource in the town to find where our gang was hiding Klaus's body. And at the storage facility they were holding him, while Damon was in the process of giving Rebecca Klaus's body, a lark showed up and staked Klaus in the chest with the indestructible white oak stake. So naturally, everyone was freaking out, thinking they were going to die along with Klaus because he told them that they were in his sire line. And at this point in the finale, Elena was in Matt's truck because him and Jeremy drugged her so that they could get her out of town away from all the vampires to keep her safe. This forced Elena to have to make a choice about which Salvatore brother she would say goodbye to. Would she choose Damon or would she choose Stefan? And the reason she was put in this position is because, like I said, Damon was in the storage lockers where they were hiding Klaus's body, and that was like an hour out of town, and Stefan was back in Mystic Falls, and with limited time, she has to decide which direction she's going to go in. Is she going to go back to say goodbye to Stefan, or is she going to keep driving to say goodbye to Damon? Which, in a way, is also a manifestation of her having to make the choice of which brother she wants to be with. Because that was the theme of season 3, really. Her relationship with Stefan was tumultuous after he left town with Klaus because of the deal he made with Klaus to save Damon's life. He became a Ripper, he was then compelled to turn his humanity back Klaus, and he then got his humanity turned back on, but he was so obsessed with getting revenge on Klaus for everything he took from him that he ended up really hurting Elena. He spent the second half of season 3 trying to become his old self again and make amends to Elena, who never really gave up on him, and they were like slowly trying to build their relationship back up towards the end of the season. But with Stefan's absence in the beginning of the season and everything that was going on with him in the middle of the season, Elena grew much closer to Damon, who was her emotional rock. Now, Elena had already had attractions towards Damon. Damon's been in love with her this whole time. She's had feelings for him, but they only grew stronger and stronger throughout the last season, and she's been really struggling to come to terms with them. But with Stefan out of the picture, she was able to get closer to Damon, and they had some really sexy times, but she's still really conflicted about what her life would be like if she was with Damon. So after struggling over which brother to choose throughout the whole of season 3, Elena was put in this very physical situation where she had to make a choice, and she chose Stefan. When she was breaking the news to Damon over the phone, she told him that Stefan came into her life when she really needed needed him, and maybe if her and Damon had met first, things would be different. But we then see in a flashback that her and Damon did meet first, but he compelled her to forget. But ultimately, all this panic was for no reason because everyone wasn't going to die, because unbeknownst to them all, Bonnie had saved the day, like she always does, by performing a spell on Klaus that put him inside of Tyler's body, so that in the event Alark tried to kill him, he wouldn't be able to, and Bonnie's mother and all of her friends would be safe. And it was a really smart plan by Bonnie because they were all just going off of Klaus's word that he was the originator of their sire line. There was no confirmation, but there was confirmation that Tyler originated from Klaus's sire line because they all saw Klaus literally turn Tyler with his blood. So Bonnie putting Klaus in Tyler's body allowed Klaus in Tyler's body to fake his death in front of Caroline. She told everyone else that Tyler died. That makes it super believable, but then everybody else is okay. And at the end, Rebecca and Elijah were very devastated when they learned Klaus died. Rebecca more so than Elijah, and she ends up calling Stefan and telling him that their deal is off now that Klaus is dead. She's tired of running, she doesn't want to run anymore, so the only way to kill Alark is to kill Elena. So Rebecca shows up on Wickery Bridge, and while Matt's really distracted crying over Tyler's death, Elena points out to him that there's someone or something in the middle of the road and he needs to watch out. So Matt swerves to avoid hitting Rebecca, and him and Elena in his truck dive off Wickery Bridge into the river. But luckily, Stefan was there to save the day, and he came down under the water, broke the door off, and was going to save Elena, but she insisted on him saving Matt and not her. A big theme of Elena and Stefan coming back together is that Elena loves that Stefan always respects her choices. So Stefan respected Elena's choice in that moment and saved Matt, and there wasn't enough time to save Elena, so she drowned and died, therefore ending Alark's life along with hers. But that's not all, because the season ends with Meredith Fell revealing that when Jeremy brought Elena to the hospital, her injuries were a lot worse than she told anyone. Elena had a cerebral hemorrhage, bleeding of the brain, from when she hit her head when she was kidnapped by Klaus, so she made a decision to heal Elena with some of Damon's blood that she had stored over, because Meredith is a doctor who cheats and spent the whole season healing people with vampire blood. So Elena had Damon's vampire blood in her when she died. So she woke up, and Elena is now in transition. And that is where we are currently up to, the transition. Transitioning from season 3 to season 4, because it's a transition for Elena and a transition for the show. I know it was a lot, but season 3 was a lot, and we jumped straight into it in season 4 from where we left off in season 3, so I think the context was super necessary. And doing that little snapshot recap really reminded me how much I loved season 3, and how much of a focus witches and powers and spells and magic was, because that's some of my favorite aspects of the show. Like, if I could pick any supernatural creature to be in the show, I would definitely be a witch. But if I'm being for real, unlike Bonnie, I would not be saving the day and doing spells for everybody else. I'd be doing spells for me. I'd be doing spells myself to be like super productive, or give me like tons of energy, or help me fall asleep like instantly, just making my life a lot easier and better. And while sadly that may not be a possibility, I do have a little magic in my pocket with today's sponsor, Magic Mind. As I'm sure you can imagine with how long and amazing these videos are, I spend a lot of time at my computer scripting and editing, making these videos. And it can be super challenging at times to stay focused and motivated and energized for hours on end, as I'm sure it is for most of us when we're working or studying or just trying to get stuff done. But luckily I have this little baby to come in clutch, because whenever I take Magic Mind's performance focus shots, I feel the difference within 30 seconds thanks to their nano encapsulation technology, making them highly bioabsorbable. With these mental performance shots, I'm able to get stuff done while working super fast and efficiently, and it gives me a level of focus and energy that not even caffeine can. Now don't get me wrong, I still love coffee, but I always found whenever I had a second one in the middle of the day to like push myself through that afternoon slump, when it came to the effects of the caffeine on my body and my mind, the cons were outweighing the pros. So yeah, I only have my one morning coffee because I have to be really careful with caffeine. See, unlike too much caffeine, Magic Mind doesn't increase my anxiety, upset my stomach, exacerbate my stress, or disturb my sleep. With their 12 doctor-validated active ingredients designed to support your body's energy engine, Magic Mind has you and your mental wealth covered from day to night. I've been using Magic Mind for months, and I'm so happy with the results, and they're so confident in their product, as they should be, that they even offer a 100% refund, no questions asked, within 100 days of purchase. And if you would like to try out Magic Mind's performance focus shots, then you can go ahead and click the link in the top of the description of this video, or go to magicmind.com/LukeXR, and if you use code LukeXR20, it gets you up to 48% off your first subscription for the first 10 days, or 20% off for a one-time purchase. Thank you, Magic Mind, for sponsoring this video, and without further ado, let's get into it, because I'm about to dive in to my deep dive and recap into the Vampire Diaries Season 4, Part 1, the transition chapter, covering episodes 1 and 2. Starting off with Season 4, Episode 1, the premiere, titled Growing Pains. So the episode begins with a white screen and we hear sirens and cars driving past and birds and lawnmowers, lots of noises, and the screen fades out from white into Elena's bedroom. We're seeing her wake up and she is gasping for air, and Stefan is on her bed in front of her saying that she's okay, she's okay, she's asking what's going on, and he says that she's been in and out for hours. So since Elena woke up from dying, from drowning off of Wickery Bridge in the hospital, she's just been in and out of consciousness until now, which I think they do this because so much happens in this day. They wanted to start the episode in the morning, but I think it would have been a lot more interesting to have this episode pick up right where the last one left off. Like, the last episode ended with Elena gasping for air, coming back to life in the morgue. I think it would have been really cool to start the episode that way and see everyone's initial reactions, you know, to her waking up and her being in transition and her not being dead, because we kind of don't really get to see that, bar Stefan looking at her body in disbelief and Damon finding out from Meredith what actually happened, but I digress. So Elena asks Stefan what happened, seemingly confused, and he tells her about how she was in the car with Matt when he drove off of Wickery Bridge. And Elena's like, oh my god, Matt, is he? And Damon from across the room on her window seat, looking pissed off, says, alive? Why don't you ask Stefan, the hero? Elena thanks Stefan for saving Matt, but is like, how did you? And Damon interrupts again, saying, save you? He didn't. And Elena's looking really confused, and Stefan fills in the gaps in her memory, saying that when Jeremy took her to the hospital, her injuries were a lot worse than Meredith let on. So Meredith, the doctor who uses vampire blood to heal people, gave Elena some of Damon's blood secretively to help heal her. And when Elena and Matt went off of Wickery Bridge and she drowned to death, well, Damon's blood was in her system. And Elena freaks out and is like, oh my god, am I dead? No, wait, that wasn't supposed to happen. She doesn't want to be in transition into a vampire. She wants to be dead. She's wanted to die since season 2, and she had horrible survivor's guilt for surviving the crash, the first one, with her parents off of Wickery Bridge. So girlie was ready to die. I mean, we saw her in the water. After a little bit, once Matt was okay, she did not fight anymore. She was waiting for the sweet release of death. But lo and behold, this is the situation we're in, and Stefan tells Elena that he spoke to Bonnie, and she said she's going to try to do anything that she can, you know, speak to the witch spirits. Maybe there's a way out of this. And Damon's like, there isn't, okay? We all know how this goes. You either feed or you die. There's no door number 3. And he's right. And now Elena starts crying, saying,
I was supposed to die. I don't want to be, I can't be a vampire.
if there's anything Bonnie can do, she has to try. God, can Bonnie not catch a break? Like, she literally just spent the entire night trying to save all of your lives by saving Klaus so you didn't die along with him. The night before, trying to get rid of a lark, but she actually ended up desiccating Klaus. The night before that, she was possessed by Esther to feed a lark and turn him into the monster he became. And before that, she was kidnapped by Klaus to unlink the spell between him and his siblings so they would not be killed if one of them died. And then before that, y'all got involved with this mess with Esther, and her mother got turned into a vampire. Just give her a break. One day off. Like, you're not dead, Elena. Anyway, Damon scoffs, rolling his eyes, and says, your choice, Elena, as always. And he walks away. Stefan comforts Elena, saying they're going to do everything they can to fix this. And yeah, so this kind of points out where everything's at. Elena's freaking out because she doesn't want to be a vampire. Stefan's feeling remorse because he's low-key part of the reason Elena died, because he chose to save Matt, of all people, over her, because he was respecting her choices. And Damon is so sick and tired of respecting Elena's choices, when with all due respect, her choices are pretty bad and dumb and most of the time. And also, if it was him, he would have just saved Elena. After the title sequence, Stefan follows Damon down into the Gilbert kitchen, where Damon pours himself a glass of morning bourbon. And he says to Stefan, way to get her hopes up for something that's never happened in the history of vampirism, which is fair. But at the same time, magic does always have a loophole, you never know. I mean, Bonnie's pretty powerful, and one thing about her, she's gonna ask those witches a favor. She literally brought Jeremy back to life. I mean, yes, it pierced a hole through the other side of the supernatural purgatory, but one thing about Bonnie, she's gonna do anything she can to protect and save her friends. So it's not completely off the table. Stefan tells Damon that he wasn't there the day Elena looked him in the eye and told him that she absolutely never wanted this, which you'll remember was when Elena and Stefan went on that hike after Elena was gonna die in the curse via the sacrifice via Klaus, but Damon force-fed her his blood, and then her birth father John Gilbert gave her life force to him. So like, that's my whole point. You've already escaped turning into a vampire once before. Let's take that as a win. You fought the fight. It's season 4. Become a vampire. I mean, Bella Swan was begging for it. And honestly, what did you think was going to happen if you just spent your whole life dating vampires? It's kind of inevitable that you were eventually going to get turned into one. And hey, at this point, if you are, at least Klaus will get off your back, because if you're a vampire, you're no longer a human doppelganger, and he can't use your blood to make more hybrids. And he probably won't be too pissed off like he was with Catherine, because at least he still got to kill you, break his curse, and make a bunch of hybrids, and he's got a bunch of bags full of her blood. So I think Klaus will be like, you know what? We had a good time, you and me. You're useless to me now. Go live your life. You didn't exactly stab me in the back. It's okay. Like, all's well that ends well. Now, on the real, I obviously do have sympathy for Elena not wanting to be a vampire because, you know, that scene in season 2 where she explained why she didn't want to was very touching. You know, she was talking about how she wanted to grow old and have children and she never wanted this life, you know, and also she's been with Stefan this whole time who makes being a vampire look utterly miserable. So I do feel for her that she doesn't want this. But when the alternative is her being dead, it's kind of like, get over it, you know? Anyway, Damon says to Stefan with this response about Elena not wanting to be a vampire that he shouldn't have let her die then. And Stefan says, I never meant for her to die. She asked me to help Matt, and I did. And Damon's like, and now the world has one more quarterback. Congrats, Stefan. And honestly, I agree. Stefan, what are your ties to Matt? I get you're respecting Elena's decision and he's her ex-boyfriend slash childhood friend or whatever, and she would have been upset by it, but Elena knows grief. She's lost basically 6 parental figures. I think she'll survive losing Matt. Okay, she'll be upset, but at least she'll still be human. And Stefan says, I made a choice that I will regret for the rest of my life, now let me fix it. And it's good that Stefan regrets it, because it was a dumb decision. Even the actor who plays Stefan, Mr. Paul Wesley, aka Stefussi, said that that scene with Stefan saving Elena and Matt in the bridge was so stupid.
I'm a vampire. And so I called the writers and I said, guys, this doesn't make any sense. I don't buy it. Okay, I'll be completely honest. The writers are probably gonna get mad at me. I don't buy it. I personally think Stefan would have just went, I don't really care what the hell you have to say, and would have grabbed her.
He's a vampire. Why couldn't he have saved both? Or he could have just wasted not so much time arguing with Elena. He could have either ignored her, brought her to the surface, then got back down to get Matt, or quickly grabbed Matt, seeing that she wasn't going to budge, and then go back down. They spent so much time arguing under the water. I can't. Like, I'm getting angry and triggered all over again. That Wickery Bridge drowning scene from the season 3 finale will forever haunt me. We then go back upstairs to Elena's bedroom. She's staring at herself in the mirror, rubbing her temples, rubbing her mouth. Like, she's clearly uncomfortable as her body is pushing her to transition into a vampire. And she's particularly getting really irritated by the lamps in her bedroom. Like, the light bulb buzzing seems to really be heightened and bothering her. And she's looking really pissed off, but then she looks up and notices Jeremy, and she goes to give him a big hug. He asks how she's doing because he saw Vicky go through this, and she was like really struggling. She was a mess. Her emotions were all over the place, and all these memories came flooding back. But Elena's like, I'm fine. I'm not Vicky. Okay, Elena. We don't need to make a jab at the girl who's dead. Elena looks over to the buzzing lamp, still distracted and irritated by it, but Jeremy tells her, no, you're you. You act like everything's okay so no one worries about you, but you need help. She snaps at him saying, I'm fine, and then says sorry because it was a bit harsh. And she asks him if he's spoken to Bonnie, and he said, yeah, she's gonna try talk to the spirits. You know, when I died, she pleaded to them and they helped bring me back to life. And Elena's like, yeah, but there were horrible consequences, i.e. him having a connection to the other side and being able to talk to ghosts, and subsequently cheating on Bonnie with his ex-girlfriend lover. But that's on you, Jeremy. That's not on the consequences. But Jeremy's like, what could be worse than you being a vampire? I don't know, her being dead. But one thing we know about Jeremy in the recent episodes we've been watching is he's really not a fan of vampires. He left town because of it. When he came back, he tried to get Elena out of town. He is over the vampire BS. And he says, what I need is my sister, not another one of them. Elena says they're going to find a way out of this. And Jeremy says he hopes so and leaves. And finally, Elena can't take that irritating lamp anymore, so she pops that bulb in her hands. Girlie's tweaking. We then come to the Lockwood cellar where Bonnie is looking at Klaus's burnt body in his coffin, and then suddenly Tyler comes out. We'll remember that Klaus is inhabiting Tyler's body because of the spell Bonnie did to protect everybody and Klaus's sire line from all dying out, and I'm going to refer to him as Ty Klaus. So he gives her a fright by looking at his body saying, beautiful, isn't it? And Bonnie's like, what are you doing here, Klaus? The deal was that I put you in Tyler's body and then you find someone else to jump into. But Ty Klaus says, well, that was before, when I thought my body would be a pile of ash, but looks like fate and oxygen intervened and there I am, so put me back in my body. I'm not sure how Klaus's body didn't evaporate or turn to ash from the fire. I'm assuming maybe Bonnie did a spell on it. I don't know, because when we saw his brother Finn get killed by the White Oak Stake, he burned to a crisp and disappeared and floated in the wind. It was bye-bye Finn. But I digress. Bonnie basically tells Ty Klaus to get in line and take a number because she's a bit busy and preoccupied by trying to help Elena not become a vampire. And Ty Klaus is like, Elena's no longer my concern because now he can't use her blood to make hybrids. And Bonnie's like, you're forgetting who just saved your life. And Ty Klaus grabs Bonnie hard by the throat, lifting her in the air, choking her, saying, you forget I could rip your tongue out. Now put me back. And honestly, Michael Trevino, who plays Tyler Lockwood, who's now playing Klaus in Tyler's body, Michael Trevino was really looking at Joseph Morgan's inflections and the way he spoke as Klaus. Obviously, it's never going to be as good as the real deal, but he did a pretty T job.
Now put me back.
And if I had a nickel for every time Klaus inhabited someone's body on the show, I'd have two. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. While being choked, Bonnie says to Ty Klaus, if I can keep Elena human, you'll still have an endless supply of blood to make your hybrids. Isn't that what you really want? And Ty Klaus looks at her for a moment and thinks to himself, you know what, that is kind of what I want. I did spend like the better part of the past 2 seasons trying to be able to make hybrids, so you know what? Fine. So he drops Bonnie and says to her, same rules apply. Nobody can know. Well, that won't last long. So over at the Mystic Falls Hospital, Meredith Fell bumps into a patient of hers who is a new character in the show. Down here, little picture, Pastor Young. And she's like, Pastor Young, what do I owe the pleasure? It better not be your blood pressure again. And he's like, honestly, Dr. Fell, I wish it would. And there's a bunch of men behind him and he says to them, get all the blood bags, boys, sweep the basement, check the rooms. And she's like, yo, what's going on here? And Pastor Young says that they're adding a few security measures because the blood in this place seems to be flying off the shelves. Well, because the vampires are drinking it, to be fair, but is that not better than all of your citizens being fed on by them and killed? Tit for tat. We really need to weigh up the pros and cons here. Anyways, Meredith asks who gave him that authority, and he tells her the council. They've entrusted him to secure the town because unlike some founding families, he doesn't have conflicting interests. He's obviously referring to how she's involved with vampires and how she uses vampire blood to heal some of her patients, which in theory is a good thing, but now that 2 of her patients, namely Bill Forbes and Elena Gilbert, have been healed with vampire blood and then died and been in transition to become vampires, I would say that her methods are a little flimsy at best. Meredith tries to at least play dumb, but Pastor Young tells her that a Lark Saltzman told them everything and she better start looking for a new job. Ooh. Okay, so now we're gonna see what the aftermath of a Lark outing everyone to the council is, and we'll see what this new council does. Not that we've ever been afraid of the council before, but this is a new council. It's a new regime run by a pastor. Okay, I'm not sure if a religious leader is exactly the best leader for a vampire coalition extermination situation. Over in a hospital room, Matt is packing up his things after being discharged because, remember, he drove off a bridge and drowned. And he's talking to Caroline saying Elena doesn't want to be a vampire. And Caroline's like, well, she doesn't want to be dead either, and now she's not. Look at Caroline looking on the positive side of things. And it makes sense that everyone kind of thinks this is so bad and such a big deal, whereas Caroline's like, whatever. Because her becoming a vampire actually improved her life, made things better for her, and she's the most in control vampire there is. So she's like, I don't see what the big deal is. Maybe Elena needs a personality refresh. Anyways, Caroline tells Matt that it's not his fault, and he starts yelling like, it is my fault. I was the one driving the car, now Elena's a vampire because of me. And Caroline goes up to him and is like, shh, cool it with the V word. I'm a fugitive, remember? Because if you remember at the end of last season, when Alark went to the Founders Council meeting, he outed Caroline as a vampire and Tyler as a vampire werewolf hybrid, so they both decided to go on the run together, but then obviously Caroline thought Tyler died. So she's sobbing in Matt's arms and he's comforting her, and then they hear a walkie-talkie of a police officer, so Caroline quickly vamp speeds away, and the police officer, one of the guys working for Pastor Young, comes in and sees Matt alone, and Matt's like, can I help you? And he's like, sorry. And then he goes into his walkie and he's like, all clear here. Okay, that's all you do? You don't even he just poked his head in. You don't look behind the curtains, you don't look in the cupboards, you don't survey the room. Some kind of search and sweep this is, but I digress. Even with this being a new council, they're somehow stupider than the Lost. We then get a quick scene of Pastor Young and his deputies arresting Carol Lockwood in her own home, and she's like, you can't arrest me, I'm the mayor. And Pastor Young's like, not anymore. Oh, he is on a mission today. Because then we get a scene in the town square outside the police department where Liz is just getting out of her car to go to work, and Pastor Young is like, sorry Liz, you're not going to work today. He thinks he's eating. He's like ruining everyone's day. He's like, I'm running this town now. Pastor Young tells Liz that they're taking her badge because she's no longer fit to protect this town anymore. She scoffs at them, telling them that they have no idea what they're up against. And he's like, on the contrary, Alark Saltzman told us everything, and we have the town supply of vervain, including the stash from the Salvatore house. We're making our move, Liz. Okay, so now they got a buttload of vervain, and a plan laid out from them by the best, at the time, vampire hunter in town. Let's see what they're gonna do. Wanna do who? And I know that these last 3 scenes are spread apart, but with them being one after another, it just makes it seem like Pastor Young is teleporting. Like, at one point he was in the hospital, then he was at the Lockwood house, then he was at the police station. It's just funny the way it was all set up. We then get a quick scene of Caroline at home walking out with her bags, and she gets a call from her mom asking where she is. And Caroline's like, oh, you know, just nothing but boring highways, basically lying to her mom, saying she's already left because she doesn't want her to worry. But then when Caroline comes out of her front door and locks it, she gets jumped by a bunch of deputies and gets a vervain injection in her neck. And Liz is screaming on the phone like, Caroline, what's going on? So now Caroline has been kidnapped by the council. It's really not looking good for our gang, because now the council, as stupid as they are, still have some sort of power. They arrested the mayor, took away the sheriff's badge and abilities, and they kidnapped the sheriff's daughter. They have the whole town supply of vervain. I don't even know how Pastor Young managed this ish. Like, where has he been this whole time that he has so much power to take over the whole council in town? But this is basically our stakes for the episode, is the town council knows who everyone is, knows who all the vampires are, and they're making a move, a big one. And it's really bad timing considering that Elaine is in the middle of her transition. But anyway, after all of those chaotic scenes, we go back to the Gilbert house to be with Elena, where she's in the kitchen with Stefan, eating a sandwich he made her, pretending that she likes it, but really she spits it out, basically saying it tastes like garbage. And we know Stefan's a good cook, so that's not the reason. It's because her body is telling her, girl, I don't want this bologna sandwich, this bologna sandwich. I want some of that blood. I want some of that hemoglobin. I want some of that oxygen. I want some of that CO2. I don't even know if all of that stuff is in plasma. I'm just listing things related to blood. Give me a vein, you know, etc. Stefan pours himself a glass of bourbon, and this must be leftover bourbon from when Alark was living at the Gilbert house, but I feel like Jeremy would have drunk that by now, so I kind of like to think that Stefan and Damon just like to keep bourbon in everyone's house for whenever they come over, because one thing about them, they love their bourbon. And Stefan's lamenting about how he should have saved Elena, and Elena tells him, no, if you had saved me, then Matt would be dead. What do you think I'd be going through then? You did the right thing. You did what you always do. You respect my choice. And okay, I'm just going to come out and say it now. I was going to save it for a couple episodes in, but you guys know, if you watch my previous videos, season 1 to 3 that I covered, that I was a big Stelena girly. I loved Stelena. A lot of that is because I just love Stefan and his character, and I loved their relationship together at the time. Season 1 and 2, scrumptious. Season 3, the angst. This is the start of where I lose my Stelena-ish. From season 4 onwards, I'm not shipping Stelena. I still love Stefan, but at this point, him and Elena's relationship just no longer works. They're just becoming so incompatible, and I also feel like this is kind of when Elena's character starts to become annoying. Her transition into a vampire, spoiler, she becomes a vampire at the end of this episode, also marks her transition into becoming just magnified. Like, you know how they always say, like, your personality traits and everything just becomes magnified? Well, her self-centeredness and main character syndrome and irritationness and survivor's guilt and grief and me just becomes so magnified at this point. Don't get me wrong, I still love Elena, but I do think that season 4 marks a big change in who Elena used to be, and therefore makes me no longer want to ship Stelena anymore. So, you Delena girlies, your time will come. You Stelena girlies, time to start grieving. Anyway, Stefan then says, what am I supposed to do if Bonnie can't figure out a way to help you? Because then you're going to have another choice to make, Elena. Either let yourself die or become a vampire. And Elena's like, well, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And Stefan looks up awkwardly like, ooh, your parents died on a bridge. I kind of threatened to drive you off of a bridge. You did drive off of a bridge and die. And Elena's like, oh my God, did I just, ew, is there a fly in here? She didn't say that, I said that. Ugh. She said, did I just say cross that bridge? Oh my God, that's so crazy and ironic. And she starts bursting out laughing. And Stefan's like, Elena, I'm pretty sure you don't actually find that funny. And she's like, no, it's pretty funny. And she's like, I can't stop laughing. And he's like, well, your emotions are heightened. One thing about Stefan, he's going to tell you your emotions are heightened.
A lot heightened.
And then suddenly Elena's laughing turns into sobbing and then full-blown crying, and Stefan hugs her and comforts her. And then she looks away from him, and then she gets out of the hug and gets a beam of sunlight from a window in her eyes, and she flinches at it, and Stefan tells her to go upstairs where it's dark while he stays downstairs and cleans up the sandwich mess. So she does so, and when Elena gets up to her room, she sees Damon sitting on her window seat and is like, I thought you left. And he's like, cute pajamas. She looks down, seeing that she's not wearing any PJs, and she's like, that's weird. And then she hears her own voice saying, I'm tired, Damon. And she looks to the side to see her past self talking to Damon. And oh my god, the scene, it's too much. It's too much. This scene is from season 2, episode 8, after Damon and Stefan saved Elena when she was kidnapped by Rose and almost kidnapped by Elijah. And Damon had this whole conversation with Elena and compelled her to forget. So Elena is watching this happen because now that she's in transition, she's getting her memories back, all the things that Damon compelled her to forget. So this is major. This is the mark, the transition, if you will, from Stelena to Delena. And it's honestly one of my favorite Delena scenes of the show. So starting off, we have some very soft, sultry music playing in the background. Past Damon gets up and goes over to Elena, holding out her necklace. The one that Stefan gave to her, the one that had Vervain in, protected her. It was a symbol of their love. Kind of ironic that it's missing now. And Elena in present day looks down to see she doesn't have it. Elena in the past says, oh my god, my necklace, thanks. I never thought I'd see it again. I thought I lost it. I thought I lost you when I ran away to try to find you. I thought I'd never see your sweet face again. Anyways, Damon says he has something to say to Elena, and she's like, why do you have to say it with my necklace? And Damon says, because what I'm about to say is probably the most selfish thing I've ever said in my life. She tells him, Damon, don't go there. And he's like, no, you just have to hear it once. You just need to hear it. And he gets all close to her and says, I love you, Elena. And it's because I love you that I can't be selfish with you. And why you can't know this. I don't deserve you, but my brother does. He kisses Elena on the forehead and says he wishes she didn't have to forget this, but she does. And he compels her to forget while a tear rolls down his face. And then the whole scene disappears. It goes from night to day, and Elena is left standing there like, whoa. What was that? What was that? James? Anyway, yeah, so very emo, very emotional. I really love the way that the writers and directors chose to show Elena getting this memory back. You know, instead of it just being a flashback and her being like, whoa, like she's like there, she's integrated within the scene, so we get to see her react to it. And it's also very interesting that out of all scenes and things that Damon compelled her to forget, that this is the one that they chose. I honestly think they couldn't have chosen a better one. It's so symbolic. Like the necklace, it having to do with Stefan, Damon's selfishness, him being selfless in that moment. We're gonna touch on it at the end of the episode, but mark my transition into a Delena guy here, guys. Woo. Oh. So over at the Michelson mansion, Rebecca is looking at Klaus's drawings, and she starts crying, getting really upset because she thinks her brother's dead, and she trashes all of his artwork when she hears someone coming from behind her, and it's Damon.
You should know better than to sneak up on a lady.
Good advice. Have you seen one?
So we're still doing this. We're still doing the Damon-Rebecca banter. Okay. I mean, Rebecca's pissed at Damon because he slept with her and used her, and now Damon's pissed at Rebecca because she made Elena and Matt drive off the bridge. And Rebecca takes this opportunity to rub it in Damon's face, saying tragic about Elena. And not to make a grey cloud greyer, but does Matt even have automobile insurance? Which is just so funny because you know he doesn't. Like when Cole broke his hand and he had to go to the hospital, and he's like, damn, I just found out I don't even have health insurance. So if he doesn't insure his body, do you really think he's insuring his car? No, so that's a mean jab, Rebecca. Damon gets pissed off naturally, and Vamp speeds over to Rebecca, pulling out the indestructible white oak stake that belonged to a lark created by Esther, about to stab Rebecca, but she is pushing away from him and protecting herself from it when suddenly a bunch of arrows shoot through the glass window. Damon ducks away and Vamp speeds off, but all the arrows make their way into Rebecca's chest, and she falls to the ground all grey and veiny, but obviously because she's an original, regular wooden arrows won't take her out. But like the council's honestly impressing me a little bit here. Like they found out where Rebecca lived. They didn't even have to go inside. Like they must have had some really good technology to be able to like shoot her through a window. You know what I mean? Like that's tea. You gotta give him props there. But anyway, now Rebecca's been kidnapped by the council as well. Back at the Gilbert house, Elena is looking at a picture frame of her and her parents smiling when she hears a noise downstairs, and she goes down to see Stefan with Pastor Young and a bunch of deputies pointing a gun at him, and he's like, Elena, don't move. So now they've been kidnapped as well. Pastor Young is really on his world tour tonight. Back in the Lockwood cellars, Ty Klaus gets a phone call from Carol.
You incessant woman. Hey, Mom.
But he answers it, and Carol's pouring herself a midday drink at home, which is fair. She's stressed. And she's like, Tyler, thank God, honey, you're okay. I was so worried when I didn't hear back from you. And he's like, Mom, relax. Like, what's the big deal? And she's like, I just thought, I thought you might have been with Caroline. And he's like, wait a minute, what happened to Caroline? Because obviously Klaus famously is obsessed with Caroline. Carol's like, oh, you didn't hear? The council took her. And he's like, oh, crap. We then cut to some road where a black van is being escorted by a police car in front and behind it. And inside the van is Rebecca and Caroline, both tied up with rope. And Rebecca wakes up trying to get out of it, but her skin sizzles. And Caroline's like, oh, vervain ropes. Looks like a lark outed all of us to the council. And Rebecca's like, what council? So she didn't even know about the council this whole time. She's like, what do they think they're going to do to me? Because she famously can't be killed. Well, without the white oak stake that Damon just tried to kill her with, to be fair. Suddenly the wheels of the van screech and the van flips over and over again with Rebecca and Caroline flying inside. The van lands on its side and we see that a police car is flipped outside on fire and another one is barreling down the road, and there's a busted car that was obviously used to tip over the van. And then while they're on their side, the van door gets ripped open and it is Tyler, aka Klaus, come to save them. And Caroline's like, Tyler, you're alive? Oh my God, how is this even happening? And Tyler's like, we don't have any time for that, love, run. So he frees Caroline and she runs off, and Rebecca's like, hey, what about me? And Ty Klaus is like, keep him busy, little sister. She's like, what? No, it isn't possible. And then she just passes out. We then cut to the Gilbert house where Liz walks in to find Damon, and he says that Stefan and Elena are gone, so whoever took Rebecca must have nailed them too. And he says, please tell me you found something. But Liz says that she can't find anything because the council locked her and Carol out of their offices and their computers and all of their files. They don't have access to anything, which... oh my God, so dumb. Damon even points it out and is like, you guys really didn't think to have a contingency plan? And it's a major oversight for sure. Meredith, who's also there, tries to defuse the situation, but it doesn't last too long because then Matt comes in like, yo, anyone seen Elena? And then Damon vamp speeds over to him, pinning him against the wall, choking him, saying, in what world are you the one who gets to live? And Liz and Meredith are like, Damon, let him go. It's not his fault. And Damon finally drops Matt, but looking at him like he detests him. Like he's like, oh, why I oughta. We then cut to a new location, which is Pastor Young's cattle farm. And this scene is honestly so creepy and unsettling in a way that we don't often see in this show. It's not like supernaturally creepy. It's giving me like Wolf Creek vibes. Like you're in the outback, you're in the middle of nowhere, you get kidnapped by someone, you're in their creepy old house. It's like very gross and a weird, uncomfortable scene. So let's get into it. So inside Pastor Young's Amishville house, we see Elena sitting at the table, biting her nails, freaking the freak out, while Pastor Young is chatting to her, asking if she still wants to be a writer because he remembers how she used to read her short stories to his daughter when she used to babysit her, and she still wants to be a writer because of her. So he's chatting with her. He does not suspect Elena of being a vampire, but Elena's not having it. She's like, yeah, whatever. Why'd you bring me here? And Pastor Young's like, well, my deputies can watch over us here. No vampires have been invited in. Look, Elena, I know it sounds crazy, but years ago, your parents were advocating for an emergency plan like this. I never thought we'd actually have to use it. So we'll remember from previous seasons that Elena's parents were founding families. We know this, and they were in the Founders Council, and her father, Grayson Gilbert, descended from a long line of founders who were vampire hunters who created devices to fight against vampires, and Elena found various vampire hunting weapons in their family's lake house. So it's no secret her father was involved in this in a serious way, and we'll continue to build upon this lore in the future. I'll just say that. Elena's struggling to pay attention to what Pastor Young's saying because she's getting really overwhelmed by her environment because her body's super on edge to transition. She's like struggling with the sunlight. There's this clock that's ticking that's really pissing her off, and she asks Pastor Young where Stefan is, and he says he's gone where he can't hurt her. And Elena's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Stefan would never hurt me. And Pastor Young's like, well, all I do know is wherever you seem to go, as Salvatore Brothers seems to follow. He basically, in his little religious undercut, passive-aggressive way, was like, you vampire whore. Pastor Young then pulls out a large, nasty-looking slab of steak, some sort of meat, out of the fridge and starts slicing it up and plates it to give to him and Elena to eat. Like, he doesn't recook it, he doesn't heat it up. I know that meat's got maggots and salmonella. He then starts telling Elena about his plan, because one thing an evil person's gonna do is tell someone their entire plan. And he says, so, we'll hold Stefan until Damon comes looking for him, then we'll use Rebecca to lure out her siblings, and you'll give us the White Oak steak, and then we'll exterminate the entire vampire race for good. Wow, he thinks he really has it all in the bag, like it's just that easy. And also, why would you tell Elena this when you already know she's a vampire sympathizer? Idiot. Elena starts breathing heavily, super overwhelmed. She's looking at the disgusting meat that Pastor Young put in front of her. Her vision is really blurry. She then hears the sound of blood pumping in Pastor Young's artery, and she's looking at his neck, foaming at the mouth, basically. And he's asking her what's wrong. And then, just to make things worse, one of those old-timey kettles on the stove starts hissing, and Elena's like, I gotta get out of here. So she jumps out of her seat, runs out the front door, and is running through the field, but she is like blinded by the light. Her body pushing her to transition. She's already so sensitive to light, and she can like barely run, and Pastor Young yells out to someone, get her. So you think she's a vampire, but she didn't run away like a vampire? Doesn't really make sense. And Elena's shielding her eyes from the sun until finally a deputy's in front of her and hits her in the head with a gun, and she passes out. So basically what you've done, since at this point she was not a vampire, is kidnapped and assaulted an 18-year-old girl. Interesting. So over in the woods, Caroline vamp speeds Ty Klaus against a tree and starts making out with him, saying she's so happy she never thought she'd see him again, and asks how he's even alive. And Ty Klaus is like, well, it's incredible. And he's basically about to tell her that he's not Tyler, he's Klaus. But he can't even get it up because Caroline just starts making out with him again. And Klaus doesn't really do anything to stop this, because obviously he's enjoying this situation. And he vamp speeds Caroline against a tree and starts making out passionately with her. But then she starts trying to take off his clothes, and he's like, easy love, wrong time, wrong place, wrong equipment. But Caroline says, you're miraculously alive and we're fugitives on the run. All signs point to hot hybrid vampire sex. And it is a very hot and steamy scene. I love when like we get the supernatural sex scenes where they're like speeding and vamping against trees and walls and getting all aggressive, but in a consensual kind way. Caroline takes off her shirt and then takes off Ty Klaus's shirt and goes in for another kiss, but then pulls out and is like, did you just call me love? And he's like, I don't know, love. Did I? And she pushes him up against the tree and is like, what did you do with Tyler? And he's like, you know what? That's what I love about you. You're so much more than a pretty face. And she's like, oh my God, you're Klaus. You're disgusting. And Ty Klaus is like, and you're a glorious kisser. So Caroline punches him across the face. Deserved. She turns around and starts getting dressed, and Ty Klaus is like, hey, I didn't have to risk exposure to save your life. And Caroline's like, oh, so what? You do one semi-decent thing and now you're my hero? Ugh!
Oh, I need to go sanitize my mouth.
Which is so funny. I love Caroline, but at the same time, girl, it is still technically Tyler's mouth. But anyway, Ty Klaus just makes the situation worse by being like, hey, your mouth was all over mine. I was just an innocent victim. And she yells at him to put Tyler back in his body, and he says gladly, and then maybe I'll take you up on your offer of hot vampire hybrid sex. And you know what? This is a misread to me, because I don't feel like Klaus would say something that, what's the word? Crude? Crash? Rash? I don't know. I just don't feel like Klaus would say that to Caroline. He treats her like a lady, you know? But I love this scene regardless, because as Caroline shippers, we gotta take any scraps that we can get, even when Klaus isn't even in his own body. I'll take it. But we can't technically count it as their first real kiss. Over at the old abandoned witch house, Bonnie is reciting a spell surrounded by candles while Jeremy paces back and forth watching her. And Bonnie stops her spell and says, the spirits aren't listening, but there's something else I could try. If the witches won't help me save Elena, then maybe I can go on the other side and bring her back myself. And Jeremy reminds us, the audience, that the other side is for dead people. So how's Bonnie gonna do that? And Bonnie's like, well, Elena's in transition, not fully dead, not fully alive. What if her spirit still exists on both sides? And Jeremy's like, even if she does, you're not dead. How can you speak to her on the other side? And Bonnie looks down and says nothing. Jeremy realizes where this is going and is like, no, nobody, no, you're not killing yourself. And Bonnie's like, I was able to stop your heart to stop Klaus's. I'll do the same thing to myself. Witches have free reign on the other side. I'll find Elena and bring her back with me. And Jeremy's like, that's assuming you can even wake up. But Bonnie says, I'm stronger now after finding a new source of power. And Jeremy yells, new source of power, Bonnie? What kind of power is going to let you kill yourself and bring yourself back to life? Black magic, dark magic. But Bonnie asks Jeremy, do you want Elena back or not? And that silences him. She mutes him. And you know what? Once again, Jeremy and once again, Bonnie willing to risk her life for Elena. We have been here time and time again. And once again, Jeremy being put in a position where he's like, oh, do I want to save the girl that I love, who really is actually my ex because I cheated on her with my ghost lover? Or do I want to save my sister, who's really my cousin because it turns out she's adopted and her birth father is my uncle? You know, it's a tough spot for him to be in. And it's honestly just so crazy that it's one thing for Bonnie to risk her life so that Elena doesn't have to die, but Bonnie's gonna risk her life just so Elena doesn't have to be a vampire. If she transitions, she'll still sort of be alive. She'll still be here. What happens if you die? You're just gonna die for that? Like that, it just doesn't seem worth it. It's not worth it initially, and now it's super not worth it. Guys, it's like she can still sort of be herself. Like, you know, we love Caroline when she turned. That was tough for a little bit, but we got over it. Give Elena a chance. Give Hope a chance. Ugh. And the whole reason Elena wants to stay being a human anyway is just so that she can like grow old and have kids, which growing old does not seem that fun, and having kids seems super overrated, so what's the big deal? So back at the Gilbert house, Damon's trying to figure out where Elena and Stefan could be, and Liz says with the Lark's weapons and their vervain, they could be anywhere. Okay, that's not helping. And Damon's like, come on guys, think. It takes a lot to hold a vampire down. Reinforced steel, iron doors, think. And Matt for once actually contributes and does something helpful and says, well, Pastor Young has a cattle farm. Those pens could easily be modified. Damon looks happy about this and grabs Matt and says, you finally have a chance to prove how sorry you are. And they both leave. And it turns out Matt was right, because we cut to Pastor Young's cattle farm and we go inside of a barn where we see Elena wake up in a modified pen that is turned into a cell, and she hears coughing and she looks up to see a bunch of vervain in the ceiling that is being blown with a fan. And she looks across from her to see Rebecca with blood all over her shirt and her own cell coughing due to the vervain in the ceiling, and she's like, wow, I thought I killed you. And then Elena's like, Stefan, where are you? And Stefan's on the other side of her, so they can't even see each other because there's a wall between them, but they can talk at least. Elena's looking very weak, and she tells Stefan that she didn't get a chance to feed, and he's freaking out. And Rebecca's like, oh, I see what's going on here. You died with vampire blood in your system, and you haven't had a chance to feed. I estimate now you probably have 3 hours left, which means I get to watch you die all over again. My day's just gotten a whole lot better. Which, yeah, one thing about Rebecca, she loves to prey on Elena's downfall. She has hated Elena since day one. Like, her nickname for her is that doppelganger wench, that doppelganger bitch. Like, she hates her guts, so she's gonna enjoy this, mama. And this line from Rebecca is also just a great way to set up the stakes, you know, for the audience. It's like, okay, now we got a clock ticking. Elena's stuck in a cell without human blood. If she doesn't feed, we know she will just die. We've seen it before happen with Bill Forbes and other characters who didn't want to do the transition. Back at the old abandoned witch house, Bonnie is holding Jeremy's hands, channeling him, performing her spell, and the witch spirits are whispering, and it's getting really loud and hectic, and Bonnie's nose starts bleeding. The spell's getting louder, and Jeremy tries to snap Bonnie out of it, but we know when she's like this, she's in a trance. And Jeremy's like, Bonnie, you're gonna die, I can't let you do this, which I don't really get this, because like, is that not the whole point of the spell, Jeremy? Is that Bonnie dies so she can go to the other side? Idiot. Anyways, Bonnie doesn't listen to him, still in her trance, and she keeps going, and black veins start to creep up her arms like they did when she stopped Jeremy's heart too, because she's doing black magic. Jeremy freaks out at this, and Bonnie starts hyperventilating, and then she dies. Oh, so we're gonna put a little Xy on you, Bon Bon, because you died. Is this Bonnie's first time dying? I think technically it is. Wow, okay. So Bonnie wakes up in the barn on Pastor Young's farm in Elena's cell, but Elena can't see her. So Bonnie, I guess, because witches have free reign on the other side, could just think about where she wanted to go, and then she was able to go there. So she goes over to Elena and grabs her hand and helps Elena stand up. And Elena stands up like, oh my God, Stefan, something's happening. And she's smiling. And Bonnie's like, I'm gonna get you out of here, Elena. But then Bonnie's Grams, Sheila Bennett, shows out of nowhere and is like, no. And she uses her power to make Bonnie let go of Elena. Elena falls to the ground. And Bonnie's like, Grams, what are you doing? And Grams tells Bonnie, you can't be in here. You stay away from this sort of darkness. And Bonnie says, Elena needs me. Grams says she's not your problem to solve. Now go, before they try to keep you here. Bonnie pleads to her Grams to let her stay, but her Grams gets stern and says, this kind of magic is dark, Bonnie. It's not nature's plans. Touch it again, and the spirits will unleash their anger in ways that will make you suffer. Stay away. Go! And she yells at Bonnie, and then Bonnie goes back to the old abandoned witch house in the land of the living, waking up, so she stayed dead for like 30 seconds. And Jeremy's super happy that Bonnie's alive, but Bonnie's super sad, saying, it didn't work. I couldn't do it. So Grams must have used her power to push Bonnie back to life, and Bonnie should have listened to her Grams because she's getting way too risky frisky with the spirits. She already asked him to bring Jeremy back to life. She already asked him for a favor on how to save Damon's life. The spirits are probably like, girl, enough favors. Like, what are you gonna do for us, huh? All you do is take. And for people like, I don't give a fuck about, like, why would the spirits care about Elena? They'd probably want her gone. Now that she's a vampire, she can't be used to make more hybrids for Klaus. It's a win-win for them. When she saved Klaus's life, the spirits are probably like, no, girl, why'd you do that? If he died and you let a lark do the job, all the vampires would be gone. Nature, the balance would be restored. The spirits are like, Bon Bon, time is up. And this is, from memory, the last time we ever come into the abandoned witch house. Like, this marks the end of Bonnie's connection with the spirits in this house, and we can kind of see the path she's going down with her magic. It's getting dark. So back at Pastor Young's barn, it is nighttime now, and inside we see Elena in her cell, looking really pale. She looks a lot worse. And she musters the energy to tell Stefan through the wall, I'm out of time. I need blood. I'm dying. And Stefan shouts out to the officers saying, someone help, come in here, someone, hello.
Hey!
Shut up.
Rebecca's like, will you shut up? I'm trying to watch Elena die here. That was her eating popcorn. I realized that probably needed some context. Stefan pleads to the officer, telling him that Elena will die if he doesn't let her out. The officer looks to Elena, then to Stefan and says, sorry, that's not really my problem. Oh. He goes to walk away, and Stefan uses what little energy he has left to vamp speed to the end of the cage and yell at the officer, let her out, let her out. But the officer just shoots Stefan a bunch in the stomach and he falls to the ground. He rushes back, yelling to let Elena out, and he keeps doing this over and over again, keeps getting shot until finally he falls to the ground, passes out, and the officer walks out. The camera holds on Rebecca's face, looking touched, which is a bit strange, but we'll get back to that. Back at the abandoned witch house, Jeremy is telling Ty Klaus that Bonnie isn't strong enough. But Ty Klaus says, you were strong enough to put me in here, surely you're strong enough to take me out. But Bonnie says it's too dangerous after she upset the spirits by trying to save Elena. She can't use that kind of magic again. But Ty Klaus yells at her, saying, do the bloody spell, Bonnie. Caroline is like, let's just all relax, okay? She said she can't. Let's just wait a few days until Bonnie is well rested and strong enough, and then she can just use traditional magic again. Right, Bonnie? Meanwhile, Bonnie's like, girl, no, it's black magic either way. Because if we remember at the end of the season 3 finale, when she put Klaus in Tyler's body, Ty Klaus said to Bonnie, the spirits won't be happy with you. And Bonnie said, the spirits don't get to control me anymore. I'm in charge of what I do. So like Bonnie's gone back and forth about whether or not she wants to turn on the spirits, you know? And she already did dark magic by putting Klaus in Tyler's body. And now Caroline's in a rock and a hard place because she wants to protect her bestie, but she also wants her boyfriend back. But Ty Klaus isn't having any of this. He rips open his shirt, grows werewolf claws out of his fingers because he's a hybrid, so he can do that at will, takes his fingers and punctures them into his chest, and he screams. Caroline freaks out, asking what he's doing, and he says that he's ripping Tyler's heart out, and he'll just jump into the next person's body. And Jeremy's like, he's bluffing, he needs a witch to do that. And he's like, what makes you think I don't have one? Or 10. Now put me back, Bonnie, before I rip Tyler's heart out. Bonnie hesitates, but Ty Klaus starts digging further into his chest, and we actually see his heart starting to come out of his chest. And Caroline's freaking out, crying, saying, no, you're killing him. And Bonnie's like, okay, stop. I'll do the spell. I'll do it. Oh. The manipulation situation station. It was nice to see Bonnie think she had the power for a little bit at the end of the last season, but surely she could have just put Klaus in like a hamster or like a kitten or something. Did she have to put him in another person, especially someone that they love and care about? But maybe it was so that a Lark would think that Tyler actually did die because Klaus died because of the whole sire bond thing, sire line. So maybe that's the reason she did it. Anyway, I need to stop. I mean, that's what this is deep diving. I'm gonna pick apart everything. Back at the barn in Stefan's cell, he goes to lean up against the wall that he shares with Elena. He's gasping as he's picking out the last bullets out of his leg and his torso, and he checks to see if Elena's still awake and if she's okay, but he can hear how weak she sounds, and he's like, you know what? Damon was right. You should have fed earlier. Well, yes. Well, yes. He says sorry to Elena, but she says not to because he had hope and that's all she ever wanted from him. Stefan tells Elena he loves her so much. And she's like, Stefan, do you even know why I was on that bridge that night? I was coming back for you. I had to choose and I picked you because I love you. No matter what happens, it's the best choice I ever made. For now. But yeah, it's very sweet to have this moment. And even Rebecca looks touched by it. She's like, what's going on there? And you know what? When it comes to Rebecca, one thing about that girl, she loves love to a fault. And yes, she was jealous of Elena's entire life, her popularity, how everyone fawned for her affection from both brothers. And she was jealous because she used to have a thing with Stefan. But I think at this point, she's like, well, They really do love each other, huh? Like she's humanizing them. She's looking at them as people, and she's a romantic. So we'll keep that in the bag. Elena places her. Stefan and Elena are both crying at this point. Elena places her hand on the wall and tells Stefan she wishes she could see him right now, and he tells her that he's smiling, and she says, "Me too." It's so cute, but Elena's breathing starts to get slower and slower until she closes her eyes. So it's really looking not good. It's almost like the two of them in this moment are accepting that Elena's gonna die. But there's still hope because finally Damon and Matt arrive to the barn. Could it have taken you guys any long enough? Woo! And they're standing outside of Pastor Young's house and Matt's like, what are we gonna do? Storm the place? Go in there with weapons? And Damon's like, no, we don't need weapons. Just bait. And he vamp speeds over to Matt and bites him in the neck and starts drinking his blood. Matt falls to the ground and Damon's like, yoo-hoo, there's a big bad vampire out here, which is very much giving Frozen when that guy in the store is like, yoo-hoo, big summer blowout. And Pastor Young comes outside and he's like, what are you doing? Leave the boy alone. He's innocent. Okay, well, you thought Elena was innocent too and then you shoved her in a cage, so what does your word mean? Anyways, Damon says he'll release him if he releases Elena and Stefan, but Pastor Young doesn't respond and Damon's like, oh, come on, Pastor. You know I'm gonna kill him. You know I want to. And Pastor Young is like, go away. You're not invited in and I'm not coming out. Like, okay, who gives a shit? But then all of a sudden, Damon gets shot a bunch in the chest by a bunch of deputies. Damn, where are they hiding in the bushes or something? There's so many of them. Back to the older man at Witch House, Bonnie is holding Tyler's head, performing the spell to put him back in his own body and put Klaus in his body. And Jeremy tells Caroline that Bonnie shouldn't be doing this because it's black magic. But Caroline doesn't say anything because she's like, well, I want my boyfriend back, so. Tyler then opens his eyes and looks at Caroline and smiles. Caroline realizes it's actually him and he goes to walk over to her, but then he falls to the ground. Jeremy asks Bonnie what she's doing because the spell worked, like why is she still chanting and all that. But then Bonnie wakes up with her Gramps holding her hands and she can't let her go. And the spirits are all whispering really loudly and black veins travel from Bonnie to Sheila's hands up her arms. And she says to Bonnie, you made your choice. Now they're taking it out on me. Shit's really terrifying because Grams is like screaming in pain as the black veins travel up her neck onto her face, and Bonnie's like, no, please, I'm sorry. And she's like freaking out, and then Grams disappears. Bonnie falls to the ground, and she's like, what did I do? So now she feels like well, I was gonna say killed her Grams, but her Grams is already dead because she's on the other side. But the spirits are like torturing her Grams because she didn't listen to them and she did black magic. Bonnie, when will you listen to the spirits, girl? You're in their home. You're in their territory. Listen to them. Back at the barn, officers are bringing in a bunch of more vervain. I thought this was like a scarcity, a limited resource in Mystic Falls, but they seem to be having tons and tons of vervain. Where have you all been keeping it? Unless Pastor Young was growing it all this time. I mean, one thing about a Amishville, Kelty place, like they're going to be growing crops, so who knows. So they're putting in some more, and Rebecca is looking over at Stefan, and she nods at him, and he nods back knowingly. So they're communicating with their eyes. And one of the officers says to the other to go bring in the other one, probably meaning bringing in Damon, while he's like dealing with the vervain. So the one officer leaves, the other one stays, and Rebecca calls out to him and is like, sir, come here, officer. And he's like, I thought I told you to shut up. And she's like, my family, we're rich. We have mansions, castles, jewelry. Name your price. Just set me free. And he gets all cocky close to the bars and says, I'd rather watch you die. But Rebecca vamp speeds up against the bars, sticking her head out, flashing her fangs. And the officer gets a fright and stumbles back into the back of Stefan's cage. And Stefan goes through the bar, grabs him by the neck, and slams his head repeatedly against the bars until his neck breaks, and Stefan drops him to the ground as blood pools out of his head and his neck onto the floor. Stefan calls out to Elena, telling her to drink, and Elena sees the man. She sticks her arm out of the bars, trying to reach for the blood. She's like stretching and stretching. At this point, she has her neck and her head out of the bars, like trying to reach for this guy's blood. Stefan, you couldn't have like chucked his body a little closer to Elena? Like, did you really have to make this any harder than it needed to be? Anyway, it's a very suspenseful moment. You feel like she's reaching for this blood forever until she finally reaches it. She's knocking on death's door, knocking on heaven's door. And she takes the blood on her finger, takes it to her lips, and drops, and a single tear comes down her face. It's really hauntingly beautiful in a way. I don't know, I think the direction of this scene was stunning. I don't know, like it was like, whoa, like this is a big moment. Our main character, who's been a human for 3 seasons, for 22 times 4, for 68 episodes, is becoming a vampire. Woo! It's a lot. It'd be a lot. And it's so interesting that Rebecca had a change of heart and was willing to help Elena through this. But you know what? I do think Rebecca has a little fun having Elena as a rival. I don't think she really wants her dead. She's like, you know what? When I thought you were dead, I was like, that's a bummer. Now I can't be mean to this chick anymore. But you're back. Love that. I love this thing we have going here. Even though Elena kind of wins most of the time because at the end of the day, Rebecca wants everything Elena has. Elena doesn't want anything from Rebecca, so Elena's always going to come up on top. So back outside the barn, Damon is laying down, passed out from being shot, and then two officers come around the corner with their guns. One of them nudges Damon, who doesn't move at first, but then suddenly Damon gets up, grabs the gun out of the officers, and kills both of them by snapping one and stabbing the other with his own rifle. Savage. Damon then walks over to Matt, who is slowly crawling away and coughing. Very pathetic. I know he's bleeding from the neck, but like, get up, be a man. Men used to go to war. You know. And just to add pathetic insult to injury, Matt tells Damon, go ahead. Kill me. You can't possibly hate me more than I hate myself. Damon kicks Matt and then flips him around and shoves his foot into his neck and says, oh, but I can. It should have been you. And he's pushing his foot on Matt's neck. He's like choking. And then suddenly someone comes out of nowhere at a really intense speed, knocks Damon off of Matt, flips him onto his back, and it's Elena, who has her eyes all veiny and red and her fangs flashing at Damon. And she's like,
Leave him alone!
so there you go. Elena's a vampire, and I love how dramatic they made this. So we're gonna put a little vampire symbol on you, Elena. Welcome to the land of the fangs. You put up the fight, but here you are. It was your fate for bouncing with us, Salvatore brothers. We then go over to Matt, who's bleeding from the neck, stumbling into the barn. Stefan goes up to him, bites his wrist, and feeds Matt his blood to heal him, but Matt pulls away, his ungrateful ass, and is like, stop, just stop saving me. Meanwhile, he said this after having a couple gulps of that blood, so you still wanted to be healed. And Stefan's like, what the hell's your problem? And Matt's like, what do you want me to say? Thank you? Because honestly, I wish you would just let me drown. And Stefan scoffs like, you really think you were my first choice? And Matt's like, Elena's a vampire because of me. I have to live with that. And Stefan's like, no. And Stefan's like, no. You get to live with that because Elena put her life before your own. So every morning when you get out of bed, you better sure as hell earn it. And honestly, I get it. Look, if I'm being nice, jokes aside, Matt's struggling. He has survivor's guilt. It's a lot. I get it. But there are other pressing issues here. Like, see a therapist, talk to a friend. I don't know. But this whole like, oh, poor is me thing. Like, you lived, you survived, your bestie chose to save you. Let's move on, okay? Especially to Stefan, who's already upset with himself. Don't push his buttons. Honestly, Matt. Luckily, he starts to calm down a little bit in the next couple episodes, but this is kind of his arc for the first couple episodes of the season. It's like, wah, Elena's a vampire because of me. Well, no, she's a vampire because of a lot of factors. She's a vampire because Meredith chose to heal her with Damon's blood. She's a vampire because Klaus tried to kill her. She's a vampire because Rebecca drove her off of the bridge. She's a vampire because Rebecca did that because a Lark was trying to kill them. Or a Lark was trying to kill them because of Esther. There are so many different factors as to why Elena is a vampire. Honestly, pretty much everyone on this board is to blame. Like, Jeremy and Matt, you both drugged her to get her out of town. She wouldn't have been on the bridge if it wasn't for you. Like, the only people who aren't to blame, honestly, is like Caroline, Tyler, and Bonnie. They were out of it. The rest of you all played a part. So, honestly, the pity party, Matt, I can't. Back outside Pastor Young's farm, Damon and Elena are arguing, walking to Damon's car, arguing about how Damon tried to kill Matt. And Damon's like, yeah, the guy just won't die. And Elena's like, it was my choice to save him, Damon. Why can't you see that? And Damon's like, it's getting a little hard to keep track of your choices lately, Elena. Really upset because he's not been a fan of the choices she's been making. And he goes to walk to his car, but Elena stops him by saying, I remember everything. A highlight of my transition, everything you compel me to forget came flooding back. Like how you compel me to forget that you and I met first? Why didn't you tell me that? And Damon's like, would it have changed anything, Elena? Because in the season finale, when she chose Stefan, she was like, maybe if I met you first. But Elena says nothing now. She goes mute. And Damon's like, that's what I thought. And Elena's like, you asked me to make a choice, Damon, so I did. So if you're gonna be mad, take it out of me, not on Matt or on anyone else. He asks if they're done there, but Elena goes on saying, if it had been you last night on the bridge and I asked you to save Matt, and Damon interrupts and says, I would have saved you in a heartbeat without blinking. And Elena's like, and then Matt would have been dead. And Damon doesn't say anything because he doesn't care. And Elena's like, Matt would be dead, Damon. And Damon's like, yes, but you would have lived. You would have survived. You would have gotten to grow up and had the life that you wanted, the life that you deserved. And I know I didn't used to get that, Elena, but I do now. And I wanted that for you. And I would have gladly given it to you and let Matt die. Because I am that selfish. He then calms down and says, the night we met isn't the only thing you remember. And he looks at her, she looks stunned, and he walks away. Because yes, I mean, Damon is selfish, but he's selfish because he loves you. He's gonna put you above everyone else. Like, that is how intense and passionate his love is. His love manifests in another way. Stefan wants to love you in a way of respecting your choices and giving you your agency. They're very different in that way. But at the same time, Damon's like, Elena, you're not admitting something to yourself. Because you said that maybe you would have chosen me if we met first. You know we met first now. You're still not choosing me. You're telling me about memories that you remember, but you don't tell me about the most important one of me telling you that I love you. But I'm not going to let you remember that because I don't deserve you, but my brother does, and I can't be selfish with you. Like, she's purposely choosing to ignore the good parts of Damon and her feelings towards him. And at this point, Damon's getting a little pissed off. He's like, we just went through this for the whole last season. And it just, lo and behold, it's just like probably so frustrating. But at the same time, Elena's in a tough place because she now is back with Stefan, and it's like confusing for her because she grew closer to Damon, but at the same time she was trying to mend her relationship with Stefan in season 3. But can her relationship with him ever be the same, especially now that she's a vampire? These are the questions we need answers to. So over at the Michelson mansion, Klaus is packing up the final blood bags he has from Elena into ice packs, you know, in case he needs to make some hybrids. And then Rebecca storms in, crying, covered in blood, and says, how dare you save Caroline over me? And Klaus sarcastically says, oh, hello, brother. I thought you were dead, so pleased you're not. But Rebecca says, you left me. And Klaus is not fazed at all by this little tantrum, saying, I could only save one of you, and you can't be killed. Rest assured, I had a worse day than you. Now come on, let's get going. We gotta find some werewolves. So yeah, he just assumes Rebecca's gonna go with him on this hybrid hunt. But Rebecca says, oh, what? So you can create your hybrid family? You know nothing about family. But Klaus says, I sure know how to silence them with a dagger. Once again, the dagger threats, Klaus. You know your siblings are not a fan of you looming this dagger over their heads. Anytime they disappoint you, you stab them with a dagger. And Rebecca's pissed off at this, so she vamp speeds over to Klaus's cooler box, grabs one of the blood bags filled with Elena's blood, and throws it against a wall, and it bursts. Klaus is pissed, looks back to Rebecca and sees her holding the remaining 2 bags of Elena's blood, and he tells her to drop them, and Rebecca's crying, saying, I mourned you. My heart broke thinking I'd never see you again. Klaus tells her, put
Put the blood down, Rebecca. That's a good girl.
talking to her like she's a pet. Like she's a dog. She goes on crying, saying it's always been me. Not Finn, not Elijah, not Cole.
I loved you through everything and you don't even care.
Drop it!
He's not even engaging with her emotions right now. Maybe if you did, she wouldn't do what she does next. Because what she does next is yell out, you want your family? Here's your family. And she bursts the last 2 bags of Elena's blood. So now Klaus has no more of Elena's blood and no way of getting any more of it now that she's a vampire. So no human doppelganger means no more ways of making hybrids. So Rebecca put an end to his goal of making hybrids in both ways, by making Elena become a vampire and by getting rid of the last of his blood, which is fair. Given everything he's put her through, let's not forget he kept her daggered for over a century. Because he cares more about himself and his hybrids than his own family, because he feels abandoned because he doesn't share the same father as them. There's layers and layers to this that we're gonna have to save when we get into the originals. If that's something that you want, comment down below. Anyway, Klaus then vamp speeds over to Rebecca, grabs her by the throat in the air, and she's choking and says, you know something, Rebecca? You're right. I don't care. From this moment on, you are not my family. You are not my sister. You are nothing. And she sobs, and then he snaps her neck, leaving her laying on the ground, and walks out the room. It's pretty savage. It's a really sad scene. These are one of those Rebecca and Klaus fights that I always remember because it's so dark and nasty. It's like sibling fights that a lot of us have, but magnified by the supernatural element and hundreds of years, almost 1,000 years of treachery and betrayal and sibling rivalry. So over at the Salvador house, it's very early in the morning. It's still dark, but there's kind of like that glow. What is it? Twilight? Is twilight in the morning or the afternoon? But Elena and Stefan are sitting on the rooftop, and Elena says, now that the whole council knows who they are, everything's about to change. And Stefan's like, oh, well, I'm sure Damon has a revenge plan all cooked up, but I'll figure out a way to deal with that. And Elena tells Stefan that he doesn't have to try and convince her everything's okay. And Stefan says, I know, but I wish I could. I wish I could tell you that you were never going to feel pain, that you'll never crave blood, but you will. It'll be the worst thing you've ever lived through. Damn, way to make her feel better and comfort her. Like, it's her first night of being a vampire. She's been a vampire for a few hours. Like, we could ease into this. Elena holds Stefan's face and says, but I'll get to live. I'll be a sister and a friend, and I'll be with you forever, if I want. And they chuckle. Oh, girl, what does that mean? Okay. They kiss, it's super cute, and then she looks at the sky and says, we should get in before the sun comes up. But Stefan passes Elena a ring, and it's a daylight ring that Bonnie made for her in case, you know, and it's a super cute one, little gem, very dainty. He slides it on her finger in a way that's super cute. It's like the ring finger, it's giving proposal, but it's not. And they smile at each other, they kiss, and Elena leans her head on Stefan's shoulder, and they watch the sun rise together. Such a cute scene with the stars in the background, and they're on the roof, and it's just a cute little moment of piece. It kind of reminds me of that scene from season 2, episode 2, where Stefan wakes Elena up and it's like kind of that early morning time. And he took her to the empty fair, to the top of the Ferris wheel. And he was basically telling her like, it's going to be hard. I can't promise you everything's going to be okay, but I'll be there for you. It's a super cute Stelena moment. Oh. But after that cute scene, we get a disturbing one, because our final scene for this episode is it's the next morning back on Pastor Young's cattle farm, and inside he releases a hose from the back of his stove and gas starts leaking out. There are a bunch of people in there passing around bunches of vervain. So it is a council meeting, the new council team. We don't really know anyone in there. And it kind of looks like a cult gathering. He tells them, folks, by now, you know that the vampires have escaped, and it won't be long before they retaliate against us. But fear not, for I have been chosen to lead us in a movement. He locks the front door, and the council members ask him, what's going on, Pastor? But he doesn't respond to that. Instead, he continues saying, hear me, loved ones. Soon you'll be free to pass through the gates, and we'll reunite in eternity. And that same council member is like, Pastor, seriously, what's going on? And Pastor Young ignores that too. He is completely cult-brained, cult-washed. And he continues saying, friends, we are the beginning. And he lights the lighter, and the council members scream as the flames explode and engulf the entire place. And therefore, Pastor Young and all of the council members are killed. Woo! What a way to end off the episode. So much to discuss when it comes to this. Such a good way to end the episode. It's like, whoa, like what is he talking about? Like sacrificial vibes? Like, what's going on here? I just love this episode so much. I think it is so fast paced. Like I think the stakes were so high. I also love like wrapping up the whole council thing in this episode, because let's be real, the councils would not be a good villain. So it was like a good way to be like, ooh, what's going on here? This is high stakes for like Elena's transition. I think it was a great way to like set that up. And I just felt like they jam-packed so much into this episode. And a lot of it to me feels like a part 2 to the season 3 finale. So the next episode in a way is like really starting to introduce new ideas into the show for the season to come. So far, I'm having fun. I hope you are too. I think this was a great episode. Alrighty guys, before we get into my recap and deep dive of season 4 episode 2, I just wanted to let you know that if you're ever looking to dive deeper with me into the Vampire Diaries, you can always check out my Patreon, where I have a companion series to this series over here on YouTube, where we actually react to pivotal scenes from the Vampire Diaries and discuss the characters and their relationships and their motives, and just really get into the nitty gritty there, while being able to watch the scenes that I can't on YouTube due to copyright. So if you want to check out my Patreon, there is a huge backlog of videos over there, and I'm still making more. So click the link in my description to check that out if you want more Vampire Diaries content from me. But back to the deep dive and recap with season 4 episode 2, titled Memorial. So this episode begins with a sequence that cuts between different times and locations. So we have one scene that takes place in the woods with Stefan and Elena, another scene that takes place in the Salvatore house in Stefan's bedroom with Stefan and Damon and then Elena, and then another scene later on in the day with Stefan and Elena. It's a little confusing, but basically Stefan and Elena go on a camping trip so that he can teach her how to hunt animals, and we get to see like the before where he was packing for said trip and Damon was like not a fan of it. So just so you have the lay of the land, it's very back and forth, so I don't want to be like pointing to all 3 characters, so I'm just gonna like go through it with you, but just to kind of like set it up. So we begin early in the morning in the woods, where Elena and Stefan are lying on a blanket on the ground. No blow-up mattress, no tent. I know you have a logging fortune, so what's up with that, Stefan? It's very much giving bugs crawling over your legs in the woods, but I digress. We then cut to the night before in the Salvatore house, where Stefan is packing up all of their stuff for the camping trip, and Damon is sitting at his desk telling him that he's making a huge mistake. But Stefan says if he can get Elena used to animal blood right out the gate, then maybe she'll be able to bypass everything that they went through. But Damon says that he's reaching and being delusional, which in a way he kind of is, because like a fresh new vampire and you're not gonna like let them even try feed on a human, like it just, I mean, this isn't Twilight. But Stefan says, and I quote, she won't be able to handle it if she hurts someone, Damon, because her compassion is her Achilles heel, and everything is magnified right now. To which Damon responds, you better hope she's not a fan of Bambi then. We then cut back to the woods where Stefan is stalking a deer with Elena, and he vamp speeds towards the deer. Back in the Salvatore house, Damon says that she needs human blood from the vein, but Stefan says, name one vampire who didn't kill at least one human after they turned. And Damon's like, well, why don't you name one vampire who went on a bunny diet and didn't kill dozens? So they're making jabs left and right. But back in the woods, Elena drinks blood from the deer, and she is breathing really heavily, like kind of about to cry. She's clearly struggling with this experience because it's not exactly fun hurting and maiming a defenseless woodland creature, you know? Back at the Salvatore house, Stefan says if she kills someone, she will crumble. How much pain do you think she could take before she shuts off her humanity switch? But Damon says it happens to the best of us at least once or twice. We get over it. Meanwhile, Damon never turns off his humanity. That's not really something he does that often. Stefan, on the other hand, turns it off a lot and screws up his entire life and spends decades trying to resolve it, so they clearly have different perspectives on the matter. Damon starts unpacking the bags that Stefan was packing for the trip and says that Elena can't learn to control her bloodlust if she's never actually experienced the bloodlust. Stefan gets pissed off at Damon because he's like, hey, what are you doing? I just packed those bags. And he tells Damon to stop, but he does not, so he grabs his arm. Damon pushes his arm off of him. They like tussle and they have a stare down. Then back in the woods, we see Elena after she's fed on the deer. It runs away and she touches her mouth and cries, but Stefan tells her not to worry because bigger animals are more resilient and it'll heal. Stefan then grabs Elena's face and wipes the blood from her and says he knows it's hard, but she can do this. Back at the Salvatore house, Elena walks into Stefan's room to see Stefan and Damon staring each other down and is like, whoa, what's going on here? And Stefan's like, we're just having a difference of opinion when it comes to process. And Elena's like to Damon, oh, you're not a fan of the animal diet, huh? And Damon's like, yeah, no shit. He says to Elena, I say rip off the proverbial band-aid and let it bleed. You're a vampire, Elena. Be a vampire. Stefan finishes packing, ignores Damon, and asks Elena, you ready to leave? And they go to leave, but then Damon yells out to her,
Vampires eat people. It's part of the natural food pyramid.
trust me, you're gonna be miserable. And Stefan leaves anyway, but Elena looks at Damon almost like she's taking in his words and what they mean for her. People who've watched the show know what I mean, but if you haven't, we'll get to it eventually. So back in the woods, after Elena and Stefan have fed on that poor little deer, who they did leave alive, to be fair. Just running through the woods with a gaping wound, bleeding all over the place, but I digress. Stefan is trying to teach Elena how to do her super vamp speed, but Elena is giggling, being all flirty, saying, I can't do it. And Stefan's like, come on, just concentrate. It's like the starting line of a race. All you have to do is push off with every ounce of strength that you have. Elena crouches down, getting ready to run, but Stefan puts his hands on her waist, and she says she can't do it because all she can think about is his hands on her waist. Keeping in mind, the reason that Elena is so horny is because she didn't have sex for all of season 3. When Stefan left at the end of season 2 with Klaus to save Damon's life, she was no longer with Stefan that whole season. Yes, she kissed Damon a couple times in season 3, and she kissed Stefan that one time, but Mama is horny. I'm horny. And Stefan's rubbing all up her against the back. You know it's hard. And Stefan just teases her and takes his hands off of her waist, but she grabs his hands and puts them back and says, I didn't say to take them off. It feels good. And Stefan's like, oh, what does it feel like? And Elena's like you're touching every nerve in my body. And Stefan's like rubbing his hands all across her body, up her waist, to her chest, to her neck, and he whispers in her ear,
Everything is heightened.
taste, smell, sight, touch. He starts kissing Elena down her neck, and Elena is super turned on. She can't take it at this point, so she flips around and starts making out with Stefan, and then she jumps up on him. He's holding her legs. He vamp speeds over against the tree. They're making out against it, and Elena flips around, and she's like kissing his chest. It's all getting very hot and heavy. There's sexy music playing. It's super fun. But then Elena pulls back from Stefan and then runs away, vamp speeds away. So hey, at least she got the hang of that. And she kneels down, pulls back her hair, and throws up a bunch of blood. So that's not really a good sign. She's not keeping down blood. As a vampire, you kind of need blood to survive. And it's not too surprising that Elena's trying the animal diet. It makes sense that she would try this because she looked up to Stefan so much for doing the animal diet, not hurting people. And in her mind, it's like the surest way not to hurt anyone, right? But at the same time, Damon is trying to come in with that logic, trying to point out that it clearly doesn't work for Stefan because look how he's on and off the rails all over again. And every time he tries to feed on a human, he ends up killing them. Now, granted, Stefan is a ripper, but I think Damon's point still stands that Stefan is not the one to be teaching Elena about self-control and drinking blood and, you know, whether she should feed on humans or animals. Like, there's a reason in this universe that no other vampires feed on animals except Stefan. It's not sustainable. I mean, heck, even Lexi, Stefan's best friend, who continuously helped him with his ripper stints and kept him on track, she said in season 1 when she came to visit Stefan that she couldn't even keep up with the animal diet. We know that as vampires, it makes them weak and not feel like they have their full potential to use all of their abilities. And honestly, denying yourself of human blood, which is what your body naturally wants, probably makes the cravings a lot worse. But at the same time, Elena never wanted to be a vampire, so her feeding on animals instead of humans humans probably makes her feel like less of a vampire, and she's really in her denial phase at the moment and is struggling to accept that she is a creature that feeds on human blood. And on top of this, Stefan and Damon are having so many arguments about what they should do for Elena, because Damon clearly thinks he's a better vampire than Stefan, which in some ways he is. Like, besides Caroline, he's the vampire who has the most self-control. He's able to do that whole snatch, eat, erase thing. It's really only when he's in an emotional place where he starts killing people. Meanwhile, Stefan's like, Elena chose me. She's my girlfriend. If anyone's gonna help her through this, it's gonna be me. And Elena's in the middle there like, oh, okay. I don't know what to do right now. It's kind of awkward because I did make out with you both last season, but we're here. And Elena's kind of just stuck in the middle. And I guess that's how a love triangle works. So over at Pastor Young's cattle farm house, which somehow didn't burn to the ground after the gas explosion, a random man comes inside and sees that there is crime tape everywhere and numbers on the floor where all the bodies were found. And he searches the burnt up kitchen with a flashlight, makes his way over to the stove where he sees the gas line pulled out of the stove. And then he sees there's a lighter on the floor. And then he sees that there's a letter in the oven from Pastor Young to his daughter. So it's like, how stupid are the Mystic Falls Police Department? Like, did you guys do any detective work? Over at the Mystic Grill, Damon is at the bar drinking bourbon alone in the morning, so a typical Tuesday for him, when Sheriff Liz Forbes comes in and tries to pull up a chair next to him, but he tells her that chair is taken, even though there's no one there. So she throws a newspaper down in front of him and moves to the other side, and Damon reads out the headline that says, "Faulty gas line leads to tragic explosion at Young Farm." He scoffs at the headline, even though it's not too far from the truth. But Liz says that it's a better headline than "Town Council blows up, police have no suspects." And then she says to Damon, "Unless the perpetrator's sitting right in front of me." And Damon's like, "Hey, don't look at me. If I was gonna kill 12 people, I wouldn't blow them up. I'd have a dinner party." Which is a fair point. We've seen him have dinner parties and buffets with human beings before. I don't think he would waste all that blood. Anyways, Liz tells him about how the explosion was sparked from the inside, so this clearly wasn't an accident. And then from behind them, we see that same mystery man who was in Pastor Young's house enter the grill and clock Damon and Liz and start walking towards them. Damon says to Liz that the council is dead, and as far as he's concerned, that's a win. And Liz is like, "I've known these people my whole life." And Damon's like, "Well, these people tried to kill your daughter, Liz." And she doesn't really have anything to say to that because the facts are the facts. Then that mystery guy comes over to Liz and asks if he can speak to her about the explosion at the Young Farm. She asks who he is, and he introduces himself as Connor Jordan. So here is a new character, and this character scares me. So he introduces himself to Liz and shakes her hand with an ominous fingerless glove. And Liz asks if he's with the insurance investigators, but he says he's more of an independent contractor. See, if I was Liz, this would be a none of your situation, a none of your business, because you don't have the clearance, the jurisdiction, or the authority, so I'm not telling you anything to do with the fire. Anyway, Connor looks over at Damon, who gives him a cheesy smile, and Connor asks Liz if they can speak in private, and she agrees, so they walk off, and Liz gives Damon a look. And when they're gone, Damon's like, "Alrighty, nice to meet you too, Mr. Busybody." So clearly something's going on here with this character. So outside the high school, Jeremy and Matt are loading boxes into a car, and Matt asks what they are. So Jeremy tells him that they're paper lanterns. The student council made them for the memorial. They light them up in honor of the dead. And Matt's like, nobody thought fire might be a little inappropriate, which is kind of a dark joke because, well, the memorial's for a bunch of people that were blown up in the fire. And Jeremy's like, I wouldn't crack that joke in front of Elena because she's an emotional mess. I mean, he didn't say that, but that was the subtext. And Matt's like, "Oh, how's she doing, by the way?" And Jeremy's like, "Yeah, she's fine with everything considering." And Matt's like, "Well, she's a vampire because of me. So if there's anything I can do short of giving her a ride, she'll let me know." Right. Matt, you don't have a car.
Matt, look out!
So I don't know how you're gonna give her a ride. Also, your mom's a dropkick and you work at the grill as a busboy. No tea, no shade, that's sad. I feel for you. But Elena, her parents are dead. She got that life insurance. She got that inheritance. They have that founder's family generational wealth. I'm pretty sure she has a car. So Jeremy and Matt grab a couple more boxes and are walking back to the car when a girl approaches them, calling out to Jeremy. He's briefly kind of confused, not really recognizing her, and she's like, "Picture a black emo haircut and braces." And he's like, "Oh my god, April!" So we are introduced to a new character, April Young, who is kind of an character to me, to be honest. And Jeremy's like to Matt, "Do you remember April?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, Elena used to babysit you." And she's like, "Yeah, before I got shipped off to boarding school by my dad." And Jeremy's like, "Oh my god, your dad, April. I'm so sorry." And April's like, "Yeah, thank you. I think." I don't really know what to say to that yet. And Matt's like, "Oh my god, yeah, your dad was Pastor Young." And she's like, "Yeah, he had the faulty gas line." And they're like, "Ooh." And she's like, "Oh yeah, Sorry, I hadn't really figured out what to say to that yet either. Oh, wow, I'm a freak. I guess I'm just not one for grief, I guess. So, I think I have to like register for class or something. Anyway, bye. Stupid. So she's like really giving like awkward vibes, awkward energy. We could relate. You know, it's 2012. We're on Tumblr. We're feeling awkward. We're listening to 21 Pilots and then the Arctic Monkeys, and it's the vibe at the time. In a couple years, we're gonna have Halsey and Melanie Martinez. That's the vibe. I get it. I respect it. We see you, girl. She is a sign of the times. Don't stop your crying, it's the sign of the time. Over at the Salvatore house in Stefan's bedroom, Elena is leaving a voicemail to Caroline saying that she needs her help because she's having adjustment issues. She's whispering, and then Stefan enters, so she quickly hangs up her phone, which it's never a good sign to be keeping secrets in a relationship. But Stefan walks in with two glasses in one hand and a bottle of champagne in the other, and Elena's like, "What's that for?" And he says, "Well, it's from the year that you were born. I thought that we should celebrate your first feed. I know it was disgusting and traumatic and horrible, but you survived it." And Elena's like, "Well, I wouldn't exactly say that I survived it. It kind of made me sick." And Stefan's like, "Trust me, for the first month I started drinking animal blood, I had to choke it down. It gets easier." So this isn't exactly what she meant, Stefan. She meant she can't keep it down. Girly is hungry. So it's kind of like a twofold situation. Stefan's trying to be so lazy-dazy happy about the situation and not looking at the context clues and Elena's behavior and her body language, but also Elena's not being 100% honest with him. So they're having communication issues here. And the root of the problem is that Elena doesn't want to disappoint Stefan. She wants to be the good little perfect vampire for him. She wants to do what works for him with the animal blood. There's so many layers to this. But at the end of the day, it's almost like their bodies don't want them to drink animal blood. Because if you remember to begin with, but you having to choke down the animal blood, but at the same time you having to choke down the animal, but at the same time you having to choke down the animal blood, it's almost like a sign to your body that it doesn't want the animal blood. Because when Caroline turned into a vampire and she started drinking that human blood, it was like instantaneous to her. Now, granted, she woke up during transition in a hospital, so she had access to blood. But like she was drawn to it, she drank it, she was all good. Yeah, she killed a guy, and that sucked, but she never killed again. After that one guy, she never fed on humans. She's blood bags all the way, and Girly is slaying. She is in control. So it's almost like listen to your body. You know what, Caroline? Caroline is intuitively eating. That's what she's doing. Stefan, this is a toxic diet that you're on. Anyway, in reference to the vampire blood, Stefan tells Elena that the champagne will go down like silk. And Elena smiles, saying, "Oh my god, you're so cheery." She obviously doesn't want to harsh his mood because he thinks everything is going so well. And Stefan's like, "Well, yeah, because you're here and you're alive-ish. And you're gonna get through this." And Elena nods with not much confidence. Once again, I love you, Stefan, but you need to be reading her body language and facial expressions. Girly is not doing well. Stefan asks Elena if she wants to do the honors, and then she pops the champagne, the cork flies, the bubbles go everywhere, they both laugh, it's a very cute moment, they kiss, but they then get interrupted when Stefan gets a phone call from Damon, and he's like, "Damon, what?" Wait, what? So then we cut to the grill where Elena goes up to Damon and is like, "Did you do it?" And she's about to take a seat in that empty seat next to him, but he says it's taken. And she's like, "Well, no one's here." And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna pretend like there's someone there because the alternative is just too damn depressing." So this is really sad. Damon is here day drinking where he used to day drink with a lark, and he misses his bestie who died. Like, he's still in that grieving process, you know? No one's asked him how he's doing about the Alark death. And the sad thing about this is Alark would have never died if he was never turned into that vampire hunter by Esther via his dark alter ego that he had in the first place because of how many times he was killed and came back to life. And the person who killed him the most was Damon. He killed him like 3 times. So, you know, that's got to weigh up on his psyche a little bit. But anyway, Elena moves to the chair on the other side of Damon and asks if he was the one who set off the explosion that killed the town council. And he's like, "Am I wearing my "I blew up the town council" t-shirt today? Why does everyone keep asking me that?" And Damon, boo, I love you. But if it wasn't for your bad behavior, people wouldn't expect the worst of you. He's got a bad reputation, big reputations, and you heard about me. Ooh, he got some big enemies. Ay. Honestly, Damon Boo, it's time to look inwards as to why people always expect the worst of you. Elena asks him, "So did you do it?" And Damon's like, "No. Anything else?" And she tells him, "Actually, yes. There's something wrong. I can't keep any of the animal blood down." And Damon's like, "Oh, well, there's a shocker." And Elena's like, "I need your help, Damon." So he starts pointing out different people in the grill. Like, take your pick. You've got Asian fusion, Mexican, all your good old American comfort food. which is a very weird, tasteless, borderline racist line that is not typical from the show. Julie Plec was one of the writers for this episode. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say right there. Elena says no human blood. Stefan is right. I have to at least try get through this without hurting anyone. Girl, why'd you come to Damon then? What do you think he's gonna do? You already know his thoughts on the situation. But Damon rolls his eyes, drinks the rest of his bourbon, which by the way, the bottle's almost finished at this point, and he grabs Elena, takes her into the bathroom, and she's like, what are you doing? And he bites his hand and holds it out to Elena, saying, giving you what you need. Now drink. Boy, did you even wash your hand? Elena's very confused by this, and Damon tells her, you're a new vampire, Elena. You need warm blood from the vein. Maybe this will do the trick. Just don't tell Stefan. And Elena's like, why not? And Damon's like, because blood sharing is a little bit personal. And Elena's like, what do you mean personal? And Damon's like, just drink. At this point, she's like fixated, staring at the blood on his hand. And she finally goes in for a drink. And she's sipping on that blood. And Damon stumbles back like he's weak from it. And Elena's like drinking his blood while he's pinned up against the bathroom stall. And he's stroking her hair. And his eyes are kind of like rolling to the back of his head. It's very sexual. Very sexy, very turned on, very hot. And I can acknowledge the hotness. Like I said, I'm starting to board the Delena train at this point whenever I'm watching the show. This is where I'm boarding it. But at the same time, I can't ignore the fact that it's inappropriate. It's selfish. It's wrong to hurt Stefan like this. Elena chose Stefan, and you need to respect that. And Elena, I'm going to give you a pause because I know you're struggling and it's not your intention to be cheaty and weird and you don't know how personal blood sharing is, but this is messed up. But in another vein, pun intended, the blood sharing thing is so sexy. Like, why did we never do this in the show? I love it. Anyways, it's nighttime now, and we cut to the Lockwood house where Tyler and Caroline are laying in bed half naked, making out, when she pushes him off of her, saying, this is wrong. A bunch of people died and we're having sex? And he's like, yeah, well, it's grief sex. It's healthy, which honestly I've never heard of before. But anyway, he goes in to make out with her again, and Caroline pulls back saying it's selfish. And Tyler's like, if we stopped having sex every time someone in this town died, we would explode. Which is fair, because people be dropping like flies in Mystic Falls. Tyler goes in for another kiss on Caroline, but she pulls back saying, Tyler, you have to be more sensitive. And Tyler touches Caroline and she's like, Tyler. And he's like, okay, I love you. How's that for sensitive? And somehow that works because she's like, I love you too. And they stop making out again. But then they hear the doorbell ring and Tyler's like, no, who's that? And we go downstairs where we see Carol answer the door, and it's Connor Jordan. He introduces himself shaking hands with Carol with that fingerless glove yet again. The camera keeps focusing on it, and they shake hands and he introduces himself, and Carol's like, yeah, I know who you are. And I'm pretty sure that the sheriff made it clear that the tragedy at the farmhouse was an internal matter. And Connor's like, well, I like to think of it more as a cover-up. Can I come in? And Carol's like, I don't really think that's a good idea. But he just pushes his way through, and she's like, hey. And honestly, you're such an idiot. Like, trespassing in the mayor's house? I mean, granted, they don't actually do anything about it, but that's stupid behavior. Connor goes on saying, you're aware that it wasn't an accident, right? Any rookie fireman could tell you that. And Carol's pissed off like, who are you, the press? But he ignores that, going on saying, so 12 council members are dead. You're the mayor. Why weren't you at that meeting? And she's like, well, it was an official town business, because she obviously doesn't want him to know how they staged a coup and kicked her and Liz out of the group. Then Tyler comes downstairs asking what's going on, and Connor introduces himself to Tyler, reaching out his fingerless glove yet again. Tyler goes to shake his hand, and his hand starts sizzling. So clearly this glove is steeped in vervain, and Connor doesn't hesitate for a moment. He pulls out his pistol and starts shooting Tyler in the chest in front of his mother, the mayor. Tyler falls to the ground, Carol screams, and upstairs Caroline hears this, grabs his shirt and goes to make her way downstairs, and Carol screams to Tyler downstairs, Tyler, run, run! So Tyler finally wakes up and he vamp speeds, smashes through the window and runs out, and Connor goes to follow him, and Caroline is left staring at Carol like, oh shit, what's going on here? And Carol, you know, she's freaked, but at the same time she knows her son will heal, but it's still not fun watching your son get shot like 5 times. Later that night over at the Salvatore house, Stefan is pulling out the bullets out of Tyler's torso while Caroline watches, and Stefan is looking at these bullets. They're solid wood, and says that if Tyler was a regular vampire instead of a hybrid, he'd be dead. And Tyler's like, well, this guy was clearly looking for a vampire and he didn't hesitate when he found one. Stefan's inspecting the bullets, which burn his fingers, so the bullets must be steeped in vervain as well. And he looks at them and there's this etching, this symbol on it, and Caroline asks if the bullets are spelled, and Stefan says he doesn't know, but there's something. But either way, it looks like like we have a very skilled, almost supernatural vampire hunter on our hands. So it's the next day over at the Mystic Falls Church for the memorial of all the council members who died in the gas fire. And Matt goes over to Elena, who's putting up pamphlets on all of the church pews, asking how she's feeling. And she tells him, you know, I'm fine. My emotions are just all over the place. I mean, just all the sight of all the names of the dead makes me want to cry for a week. Okay, so you're not fine, Elena. Girl, why say you're fine and then list a bunch of reasons why you're not fine? I mean, I guess we've all been there. Matt tells her that she didn't have to volunteer, and she's like, people who we've known our whole lives have died, so yeah, I did. And then she spots April and is like, oh my god, is that April? So she goes over to her to chat with her. She sits down next to April, who's like, oh my god, long time no see, not since, and Elena finishes her sentence like, not since my parents' funeral. And April's like, yeah, kind of awkward considering now they're basically reuniting at April's father's funeral. Elena gives April a hug, which she looks like she really needed, and asks if she's gonna survive this, and April says, they want me to speak. I guess all the kids who lost somebody can. What am I supposed to say? I'm sorry my dad didn't fix the gas line, but if I don't say anything then, I mean, what happens if nobody does? My dad and I didn't always get along, but everybody deserves to have something nice said about them at their own funeral, you know? I mean, at my mom's funeral, everyone said really nice things. So, you know, this gives us some more character background around April, most importantly, that she is now an orphan just like Elena. So there's a lot of like similarities between them in that regard. And Elena's really sweet in this moment. She tells April, you say what you want to say or you don't say anything at all. And don't worry about your dad. Everyone loved him in this town. And April starts tearing up saying, until 2 days ago. It's so sad. And Elena's like, even still. And it's very sweet how she's comforting her. She's so compassionate. These parts of Elena are clearly heightened as well. Like all the good parts are heightened too. Her compassion, her empathy, you know? But it all goes a bit sour because Elena is holding April's hand and she starts to feel the pulse of her blood in her wrist and she starts to get really like hungry and craving that blood. So she has to leave and get out of there before she does anything crazy. And Elena runs down to the bathroom in the church and she's in there and she all of a sudden starts feeling really sick and she throws up all over the sink, all over the mirror. Then she's throwing up Damon's blood all over the place in the bathroom. So it's really not looking good. Not only could she not keep animal blood down, but now she's not keeping Damon's blood down. And she really starts to panic because it literally looks like a crime scene in there. So over at Bonnie's house, she's laying on the couch looking super depressed and Stefan's at the front door calling out to her and she's not responding. And he's like, Bonnie, like I can hear you breathing. I know you're in there. Just please answer the door. So Bonnie comes over to the front door and Stefan can clearly see she's not doing okay. Like her eyes are looking super red and watery and puffy. She's clearly been crying and he goes to give her a hug, but he can't get through the front door. So he still hasn't been invited into the Bennett house. And he asks if he can be. So Bonnie invites him into the house and he grabs her and she cries in his arms. And it's very sweet, you know, nice of somebody to come check on Bonnie, even though that's not his intention. He clearly came here to get help from her. But Bonnie just had a really traumatic experience last episode with her grams getting, you know, punished by the spirits. And why is nobody there for her? Anyway, some time has passed and Bonnie has clearly been telling Stefan about everything that happened because she says with my grams, it was like she was dying all over again just because I didn't listen to her about not doing black magic. And Stefan tells her, you know, you're dealing with the other side. It's not reliable. Witches were probably just messing with your head to try and teach you a lesson, which is crazy because like if nothing actually happened to Sheila and Sheila was just like to the other spirits, like, look, my granddaughter's not listening to me. We need to teach her a lesson. What do you say we spook her? What do you say we scare her? You know, or like maybe she wasn't privy to it, but either way, that would be crazy if like nothing bad was actually happening and it was all just a little stunt to spook Bonnie. But you know what? Maybe that's what she needed because how many times did the spirits tell Bonnie to stop messing around with black magic and dark magic and she didn't listen? So, you know, maybe it was necessary. Anyways, Bonnie says, well, it worked. I tried to do a basic nature spell this morning just to clear my head and it just brought everything back, like it was happening all over again. And she's like, look, I'm sorry, I'm a mess. I've been holed up here avoiding everyone. I've completely blown off Jamie, which, good girl, that guy is basically your de facto brother. If you remember, Jamie from last season is her mother who abandons her, like, sort of son. Like, her mother abandoned her, but then took in a child from her ex-boyfriend, and then Bonnie started dating him. It was a weird situation. Julie Plec, when I catch you in the streets, like, why can you never give Bonnie a decent love interest? I can't. First a guy who was just using Bonnie and then kidnapped her, then a witch who you just killed off, then Elena's younger brother Jeremy, and then Bonnie's like de facto brother. Julie Plec. Oh. Anyway, Bonnie sighs and asks Stefan what he came for. And Stefan's like, no, it can wait. And Bonnie's like, no, it's okay, I'm okay. You're not exactly a drop-by kind of guy, so if something's wrong, just tell me. that's enough for Stefan because he's like, alrighty, can you help me with this? Like, clearly she's not okay. Girl, you know what? Can Elena, okay, Elena's going through a lot, but Caroline, girl, you're chill. I know your boyfriend just came back to life, but can we spare a little time for your bestie Bonbon? Like, she's holding back tears. She's clearly not okay. But Stefan comes here anyway, asking for help, as everyone does to her. And he shows her the bullets from Connor's gun that he pulled out of Tyler's body and is like asking her about like the etchings within the bullets and what they could possibly mean. And Bonnie's like, I don't know. I mean, those are definitely not magic. It's not spelled, if that's what you're thinking. And she's like, why? Where'd you get these? And Stefan's like, well, I think we have a new vampire hunter in town. And Bonnie's like, bad timing. And yeah, girl, that's the understatement of the century. So back at the church, Elena's in the bathroom frantically trying to clean up all of the blood. She's on the phone with Damon asking where he is, and he says that he just got there, and we see Damon. But then Elena hears the doorknob of the bathroom start turning. It's locked so the person can't get in. And she's like, Damon, is that you? And he's like, no, still on my way. And we see on the outside of the bathroom that it's Connor, the vampire hunter, and he's listening in on the door. So Elena and is like, sorry, someone's in here. And she says to Damon on the phone, hurry. So it's a really intense situation. And Elena hangs up the phone and is on the floor frantically trying to clean up all this blood. It's very much giving me when I was 9 years old trying to clean up my explosive diarrhea in a widow's ensuite bathroom at her husband's wake. Just saying. Anyway, Damon walks down the stairs of the church bathroom with Elena's new dress to change into, and he sees Connor sitting on the couch, and he's like, oh, you again, you stalking small town funerals? And then Elena opens the door to grab the dress from Damon, and she looks over to Connor like, sorry, I spilled coffee all over my dress. Sorry for taking so long. And she goes back in the bathroom. You know, that lie was pretty believable. And now Damon is stuck having small talk with Connor. Connor goes up to Damon saying, I'm sorry, I don't think we've met before. I'm Connor Jordan. And he pulls out that hand with the fingerless glove, but Damon's not falling for that, because he's like, Damon, germaphobe. And he doesn't shake the hand. And he knocks on the door to Elena asking how she's doing in there. And she's like, just a minute. And we see inside the bathroom that Elena's changed into her new dress and is grabbing all of the paper towels covered in blood and shoving them in a bag, which is really smart, because if she just left them in a bin, Connor's clearly going to go in that bathroom and look afterwards. So you have to hide the evidence. Back outside the bathroom, Damon asks Connor what brings him to Mystic Falls. Is he a Bible salesman? And Connor chuckles and is like, no, I'm actually an environmental cleanup. Heard your town's got a bit of a pollution issue. And Damon's like, oh, really? I wouldn't know. I breathe pretty easy. I love the dynamic between the two of them. Elena comes out of the bathroom in her new dress and apologizes to Connor for taking so long. They go to leave and Damon tells Connor, well, enjoy your stay. We love visitors and the scenery is to die for. Oh, funeral pun. Too soon. And Elena and Damon leave. I love him sometimes. You crack me up. He's still drunk from that morning bourbon. We then go to like the main part of the church at the balcony at the back of the church. April is sitting there nervously tapping her pen when she gets a fright from Connor. And she's like, oh, sorry, I was just practicing my speech. And she gets up and Connor has a really creepy smile. And then he stabs her in the abdomen. He holds her as she gasps and like blood pools out of her mouth. And he leans her against the half wall of the balcony. Oh my god, guys, this episode scared me so much when I first watched it when I was like 12 years old. It is truly terrifying. Like, you're just gonna stab a 16-year-old teenage human girl? Like, what the f is wrong with you? And clearly he's a new level of vampire hunter, because most vampire hunters are just trying to protect humans from vampires, but he's willing to severely injure and threaten the lives of humans to hunt vampires. So what's that all about? Why is he so intent on it? It's a hunger. It's a hunt. We've all got a hunger. Anyway, so outside the church, Elena's walking with Damon, asking him if he brought the blood bag, and he's like, do you want to say that a little louder? But they hide behind a tree, and Damon passes Elena the blood bag, and she rips it open and starts drinking it, and he's like sort of covering her, but at the same time, you guys are still like out the front of the church in a public space. You couldn't have gone anywhere more private. With a vampire hunter on the loose, you're gonna be that sloppy. Elena starts like choking up and vomiting the blood that she just drank, and she's like, it tastes like, what is wrong with me? And he's like, I don't know, maybe it's your doppelganger blood rejecting the transition. And I mean, this is somewhat of a logical theory, because doppelgangers are a very unique, special kind of person. And when Catherine turned into a vampire, it was in the 1500s. There were no blood bags, and also it's Catherine. She had no problem feeding on humans. So, you know, this is a theory that we're floating around. But Elena's really not doing well. She thinks she's dying, and Damon says, you're not, you just need a drink from the vein, Elena. But Elena's like, no, Stefan's right, I have to try feed on animals. I can't risk killing someone.
Maybe I'm better off dead.
Like, my girlie is depressed. And Damon grabs her shoulders and is like, no, Elena, don't think like that. I'm gonna help you, you're gonna be fine. And he's like stroking her face, like, and it's getting very intimate and romantic. And then it gets interrupted because the church bell starts ringing, and Elena's like, I gotta get inside, Damon. So she leaves. And then Damon's packing the blood bag in his bag, and we see Stefan notice Elena walking away from Damon into the church and he notices Damon packing stuff into his bag, and Damon's like, oh shit. So Stefan goes up to Damon and is like, what's in the bag, Damon? And Damon says, it's a mid-service snack. Church always gets me hungry, the whole blood of Christ thing, you know? Little sacrilegious king. Stefan glares at Damon, so Damon admits that he brought the blood bag for Elena. And Stefan's like, oh, are you really that intent on getting your own way? But Damon says it's the only way, and Stefan's like, if she hurts someone, she'll be desperate to turn the guilt off, maybe even enough to shut off her humanity. And Damon adds insult to injury by saying, oh, what? And you think she'll become a ripper? And Stefan gets taken aback for a moment there and is like, yeah, well, I don't want her to be anything like me. Which really begs the question when it comes to Stefan helping Elena with her transition into vampirism, how much of this is him helping her and how much of this is him helping himself? Now stick with me. I just feel like Stefan is trying to make up for everything that he did last season with being a ripper and murdering people, hurting Elena, turning off his humanity. And he's trying to do this by helping Elena feed on animals and not hurt anyone and be a good vampire. Because I feel like he feels like if he can help her, then really he can help himself and he can do it, you know? When in reality, Stefan being a ripper is a unique case, and a new vampire trying to operate under the way that he operates from the get-go is not healthy. Elena needs to learn how to handle the bloodlust when it comes to humans. She can't off the bat go to feeding on animals. It's clearly not what's natural to their bodies and them being vampires, because Stefan is so much weaker than everyone else. He can't compel as well. He can't be as strong and as fast. Like, clearly it's not what the body wants. And for Stefan, it's fine. Like, I'm all for it because he's a ripper and he can't feed on humans without getting fully addicted and ripping their heads off. But for Elena, we have no proof that she's a ripper. Anyways, I don't think Damon is looking into this as deep as I am, because he's just making it about himself, saying, well, God forbid Elena turns out anything like me. That's what you're really thinking, isn't it, Stefan? She's gonna go off the rails eventually. Might as well make it happen sooner than later so we can get her back on track. Which, yeah, to Damon's initial point of like, God forbid Elena becomes like him, that probably is part of what Stefan's thinking as well. Is part of what him and Elena's relationship was built on, was Stefan being a good vampire, like them cosplaying as humans, like humanity, all those kind of things. Maybe he's worried that now that Elena is a vampire, that she's gonna side more with Damon, like her feelings for him are going to get heightened. She's going to connect with him more because he can't be the kind of vampire that most people are, you know? Like, he's much more suited to being with her as a human than a vampire when you're looking at it from the aspect of like, if she's wanting to feed on humans and do all that kind of stuff, like how can they do that together when he straight up can't do that? Am I making sense? I mean, on top of that, he's also not feeling confident because him and Elena were broken up for months before they recently got back together. And Elena and Damon had some serious situations going on there when she was broken up with Stefan. Like, they made out, like the feelings were going, like it's been a tumultuous time in their relationship. So he's not feeling super confident in it. And her transition just like stacks on top of that. But anyways, Stefan tells Damon that Elena is strong and she can survive this if they help her. But Damon tells Stefan that Elena's starving. She hasn't been able to keep blood down for days. And Stefan's confused, like, she didn't tell me that. Like, she said she was fine. And Damon is loving how Elena's confiding in him instead of Stefan, because he purposely tries to hurt Stefan by saying, well, there's a shocker. Your 4-legged protein shake was a bust. The juice box is a no-go. She can't even keep my blood down. Like, he knew that would hurt Stefan, but he had to bring it up anyway. And Stefan's like, she drank from you? And Damon's like, oops, did I say that out loud? And then he just walks away. You are messy, messy boots galore. So inside the church, Elena quietly walks into the main room and sits down next to Jeremy and Matt, and she's looking really pale and shaken up. Matt asks if she's okay, and she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And Jeremy tells her that April was looking for her, she needed help with her speech, and Elena's like, well, where is she? And they're all looking around, and we cut to the balcony where we see that April is tied up and gagged, bleeding, while Connor is there loading a gun. Oh my god, this sequence is so intense. And we go back down to the lower area of the main church where Jeremy's looking around and he's like, I don't know. Stefan then walks into the church and stops next to Tyler and Caroline, and he asks Tyler what he's doing there, and Tyler's like, being sensitive to the community's loss. But Stefan's like, with a hunter out to get you, and Tyler's like, I'm not letting anyone stop me from being where I need to be for my community. Oh my god, he's a pillar of this community. And Caroline's like, besides, if I see him, I'm gonna kick his ass. And honestly, it's a pretty safe bet because clearly this hunter doesn't know about hybrids, he just knows about vampires, and he doesn't know that to kill a hybrid, you either have to chop off its head or rip out its heart. A stake to the heart ain't gonna do it, buddy. Stefan then walks away and sits down alone 2 rows behind Elena. Then Mayor Carol Lockwood gets to the podium and says, before we begin the mass, we'd like to open the floor to anyone who would like to share a memory about our late friends or the town council. I know that April Young wanted to say a few words about her father, Pastor Young. April, honey? And everyone's looking around like, where's April? And April's not coming, and it's getting really awkward. So Carol's like, okay, is there anyone else who would like to say anything about Pastor Young? And no one comes up because everybody in the town is like, that mother trucker didn't check his gas line and got 11 people blown up. So finally, Elena stands up and walks to the podium, and everyone is looking super worried. And we see through Connor's POV that he is watching everyone in the crowd through his gun camera shotgun thing. I don't know much about guns, I live in Australia, but that's what's happening there. It's super suspenseful. Damon then walks into the church and dips his hand in the holy water and does the sign of the cross while smirking, being like, I don't know why that always makes me laugh. And I think it's because it's a play on fiction, because in fiction typically vampires burn up when they are touched with holy water. So it's a funny little jab there, making fun of the lore of vampires. Damon sits down next to Stefan looking at Elena and is like, ooh, she doesn't look too good. And Stefan's like, well, maybe if you told me that she's been rejecting all food sources. And Damon's like, jealousy's beneath you, brother. And Stefan's like, ugh, bite me. I love the brother banter here. It's super funny. So Elena's up on the podium with everyone staring at her, Connor pointing his rifle at her, looking for any proof that she's a vampire. And Elena starts speaking to everyone, saying, when I talked to April earlier, she was kind of nervous about coming up to speak. And now that I'm up here, I'm kind of nervous too. She grips the podium and says, the worst day of loving someone is the day that you lose them. Which is so tea. We know Elena's got grief and funerals down to a science. But then Elena stops and doesn't continue speaking because she suddenly smells blood. We cut over to Caroline and Tyler, and then also Damon and Stefan. Even though they're sitting far away from each other, throughout this whole sequence, they can hear each other through their vampire super hearing, which is so cool. I love the way that they set this up, of everyone whispering and being able to hear each other. And it's a really fun way to use this power. I feel like it's been a while since we've used the vampire hearing, but Caroline whispers, do you guys smell that? And Tyler whispers, blood. And Elena gasps, and then we zoom in to see that there is a puddle of blood in the ceiling beneath the balcony where April is tied up, and the blood is dripping into the holy water basket. So... And Damon whispers to everyone, don't turn around, it's a trap. Elena's holding onto the podium, heavily breathing, fighting the urge for blood, while Connor is watching her through his rifle, and Elena is fixated, breathing heavily, focusing on the blood, and she can't hold back, and the veins start creeping up on her face, and her eyes start going red. But just in time, Stefan shows up from behind her, grabbing her, and taking her back to her seat. So clearly, Connor, through his POV, it just looks like Elena's upset, and Stefan's just taking her back to sit down. The priest calls out for everyone to stand up, and the choir sings, and Connor pulls his rifle back. So we're in the clear for now. Back on one of the church bench pews, Stefan is holding onto Elena, and she's leaning into him saying, the blood, Stefan, the blood. I can smell it. There's so much. And Stefan tells her, remember what we've worked on. Try and focus and push back. You can do this. And Matt's like, what's wrong with her? And Stefan's like, she's hungry. She hasn't fed. And Matt's like, well, get her out of here. And Stefan's like, we can't, Matt. There's someone watching us. Matt, butt the fuck out of it. Damon then whispers that he's going to go rip off Connor's head, and Stefan says, Damon, if you do that, then you risk exposing all of us. And Elena tells Stefan, I'm losing it. And Damon's like, you have 10 seconds before I go kamikaze and finish that guy. And Stefan begs him not to do it, and it's getting really intense. Damon's counting down from 3, and he goes to walk away. But then Matt tells Elena, just feed from me. Feed from me. Everyone will think you're just upset. And Elena looks over at Stefan, and he nods for approval. So he passes Elena over to Matt. Elena is in Matt's shoulder, and she pulls back his collar and subtly sinks her fangs into him and starts drinking his blood. From the point of view of Connor's gun camera, we can see that it looks like Elena is just crying into Matt's shoulder, so we're all good here. After a while, Elena finishes feeding from Matt. She thanks him, he pops his collar to cover the wound, and she wipes the blood from her face. On the other side of the church, Tyler gets out of the pew past Caroline, walking towards the podium, and she's looking really confused. Back to Elena, she's calmer now that she's fed, but she tells Stefan that she can still smell the blood, and it's gotta be April. They have to find her. She tries to leave, but Stefan stops her, saying they can't risk it, and Elena's like, I don't care, I'm doing it, and she keeps trying to push past Stefan when they get distracted hearing Tyler up on the podium. He says that he wants to share a few words about Pastor Young, and everyone sits back down in their seats and the music stops. Connor recognizes Tyler because remember he shot him earlier, so he starts loading up his gun, getting all hot and heavy and serious, and Tyler starts talking about how when he was younger, Pastor Young taught him, how to be a part of a team, etc., etc., and then all of a sudden, out of seemingly nowhere, Connor shoots Tyler with a giant wooden stake through his chest, and Tyler goes spinning. Everyone screams, the room erupts in chaos, and everyone runs out. Damon Damon spots Connor leaving up on the balcony because Connor grabs his gun in his bag and guns for it, so Damon goes out the church. But Elena and Caroline and Stefan run up to the podium. Carol is freaking out over Tyler because he's completely passed out. I mean, he's a hybrid, but she doesn't know all the lore of the supernatural creatures. Luckily, Caroline pulls the stake out of Tyler's chest and he comes back to life and is like, I'm gonna kill that guy. And Stefan's like, I think Damon's already on it. And he tells Elena to go stay there because he's gonna go help Damon. And Elena's like, well, what about April? And Caroline tells Stefan she's got this, so Stefan goes. Carol says she has to call an ambulance, and Caroline's like, what? No, he's fine. And she's like, he just got shot in front of the entire town. I'm calling an ambulance. Which is fair, she's got to keep up appearances. But then when that argument is over, Caroline looks up to see that Elena is gone. Outside of the church, Connor throws his duffel bag full of weapons into his pickup truck and gets into his car when Damon suddenly vamp speeds towards the truck, rips off the door, and grabs Connor and throws him onto the ground. But Connor still has his pistols with wooden bullets and shoots Damon multiple times. Damon grabs the gun and throws it aside, but Connor rolls over Damon and is now on top of him and pulls a stake out of his belt and is about to stab Damon in the heart, but Damon uses his strength to push him away from him. And this is really interesting because, like, typically a vampire hunter is just a human, so how does he have so much strength to fight against a vampire? Connor's getting closer to stabbing Damon in the heart when he hears Stefan come out of the church calling out for Damon, so he realizes he can't face both of them, runs away from Damon into his truck and speeds off. And Stefan goes up to Damon, who is moaning and groaning, and he goes to help him up, but then he punches Damon in the face. And Damon's like, what's that for? And Stefan's like, you know what? And then he walks away. Which, fair. Damon getting Elena to feed on him when he knows blood sharing is personal was wrong, inappropriate, and a douchey move. So back inside the church, Elena finds April on the balcony and goes over to her to help her, but then gets really overwhelmed by all of the blood and she vamps out. Her eyes get all veiny and red, her fangs come out, and she lunges towards April. But then luckily Caroline comes out, pushing Elena away from her, and she tells Elena, April is not dead, but if you feed on her, you will kill her. And Elena's still vamped out, is like, get out of my way. And Caroline is like, she's April Young, Elena. She's your friend. She's not a warm body for you to feed on. Elena calms down, her fangs go away, and her eyes go back to normal. And Caroline is still telling her, she's an orphan, just like you. She's scared, just like you were. And she bites her wrist, moves the gag out of April's mouth, and heals her with her blood. April gasps awake and begs Caroline not to hurt her. And Caroline's like, April, honey, no one's gonna hurt you. It's so sweet. I feel really bad for April. She's not a character I particularly like, but this is savage to go through, you know? Caroline is about to compel April when she looks back at Elena and says, she needs you. You can make her forget all of this. Caroline's like, you know what? This is a teachable moment. Elena looks down at all of the blood all over April and says that she can't do this. And Caroline is like, the only way you're going to learn is if you do it. And Elena's like, Caroline, I can't. And Caroline is like, Elena, you just have to believe what you're telling her. So Elena breathes through it, bends down and goes over to April. And Elena tells April, everything's going to be okay. You're going to get through this, just like I got through it. And I'm going to help you. And she ends up compelling April. And April is like, you're gonna help me, I'm gonna be okay. And Elena looks back at Caroline like, oh my god, I did it. And Caroline's like, you did it, queen. It's a really sweet moment. And Elena looks back at April and continues compelling her. She tells her, you watched the funeral from up here so that you could grieve alone. It was a beautiful service. People said really nice things. And April smiles, and it's such an adorable moment. And honestly, this moment proves to me what I always wondered, like, why doesn't Caroline train Elena? She's the most well-adjusted vampire. She has that type A control-freak human personality that was only magnified with vampirism, so she's the best person to have trained Elena. Get rid of the Salvatore brothers. Let's get some Care Bear up in there. And that is the end of the church sequence. Honestly, this sequence, like, whoever directed and wrote this episode, which I usually put on the title cards, you did an amazing job. The sequence with Connor in the church, like, it was so suspenseful. Like, I was on edge every time I watched the scene. It's so like the elements, it goes on for so long, but it's so like dynamic, having all the characters, the whispering, the gunshots, like, it's so well done. It's a master in tension and suspense. Definitely go rewatch that sequence. It's amazing. And it's set at the backdrop of a church. Like, what church let the show film this in their church? I don't know. Either way, it was amazing. But that night at the grill, we see Jeremy and Matt are picking up their takeout, and they're talking about the crazy day that they just had, wondering how the town's gonna cover this up. And Jeremy is like, I don't know, maybe an assassination attempt on the mayor's son. And Matt's like, oh yeah, what about an altar boy gone postal? Okay, guys, let's relax. Anyways, then Connor comes and sits down at the bar and notices that Matt has a bandage on his neck and asks what that's from. And instead of Matt being like, who the f are you? Why are you talking to me? He responds and is like, my girlfriend likes to get kinky. Which I guess is an okay excuse. But who puts a giant bandage over a hickey? Anyway, they go to leave and Jeremy notices a big tattoo on Connor's arm and he's like, nice ink. Straight man and stuff. So he walks away and Matt's like, what ink? And Jeremy's like, you didn't see his giant tattoo, it was huge. And Matt's like, he didn't have a tattoo. And Jeremy's like, yeah, he did. And we see over at Connor, he looks really confused at how Jeremy knew this and how he said that, because when he looks down, we see there's nothing on his arm. So what's that all about? Looks like he's a little something more than meets the eye. Also, he's sexy. I like, can we say that? Is that okay? I know he's been doing horrible things, but something about that man. Anyway, so over in some trailer in the woods, Connor walks in, so this is where he's residing, and he sits down and reads the letter that he got from Pastor Young's burnt down house in the oven, addressed to his daughter April, and it says, "Dear April, I'm sorry for what you're going through. What I did was a necessary sacrifice, and I'm afraid it's only the first of many more sacrifices to come. There's always been an evil that's spread through Mystic Falls, but now a greater one is coming. My death is but the first in many of the war ahead to come. I will see you again when we all find our salvation. Until then, I love you, Dad." Okay, so Pastor Young sounded severely mentally ill, or religious, or in a cult. One of the three. And it's kind of sad that April didn't get this letter because it was her last words from her dad, but at the same time, maybe it's a good thing because it's not exactly very comforting, because then she'll know that it was like kind of intentional because he wrote it before he died. So over at the Salvador house, Stefan hands Elena a drink and she sniffs the alcohol and groans in disgust, but Stefan says it helps with the cravings, so she takes a gulp and coughs and then looks over at Stefan, who looks away from her, and she's like, "You're mad." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm mad. You lied to me." And she's like, "I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you." And Stefan calls BS and is like, "Come on, Elena, you lied to me." And Elena's like, "Well, you were just so happy that things were going well, and I didn't want to ruin it for you." And Stefan's like, "You think I'm happy? You're in hell, which means I'm in hell. Then you go and ask Damon for help?" And then Elena starts tearing up and is like, "Yeah, because I thought that he would understand." And Stefan's like, "You think I don't? You fed on him, Elena. You fed on him. I know that doesn't mean that much to you, but it means a lot to me, and it certainly meant a lot to Damon." At this point, Elena's full on crying, saying, "I didn't want to hurt you. I'm sorry." She wipes her eyes and is like, "Oh, why am I crying? I'm so sick of crying." She stands up and starts pacing back and forth, and Stefan says the classic, "Your emotions are a bit heightened right now." We get it, Stefan. Shut up about it. Elena goes on saying, "I feel like I've been crying ever since the day that my parents died. My life, it's like a never-ending funeral. We keep burying people, Stefan. You know what's heightened? This grief. I can't stop feeling everyone's grief. All this hurt, I feel like it's trying to explode out of me." Stefan takes Elena, comforting her, and says, "Come with me. There's something I need you to see." And then they walk away together. So for the next scene, I'm not going to point at the characters because they're kind of all involved and I just can't, my arms hurt. But we go over to the Mystic Falls High School and Damon gets out of his car and goes over to Bonnie, who just got out of her car, and he asks what they're doing there. And she's like, "I don't know, I just got here. I know as much as you do." And we see that Caroline, Stefan, Elena, Matt, and Jeremy are all sitting over on some benches outside of the school. Bonnie and Damon approach them, and Damon asks Stefan, "What are we doing here?" And Stefan has some paper lanterns in his hands and says, "We're finishing off the memorial we didn't get to have earlier. We need to start healing, Damon. We've all lost so much, especially recently, and I think we're all just numb to it. We push it away, we make a joke out of it, we ignore how we feel, we never let ourselves grieve." And Damon's like, "Oh, so you're just lighting lanterns?" "No, what we need to be doing is figuring out what this hunter is doing here and what he wants and what he knows about the death of the council. We have more important things to be doing right now." But Stefan's like, "No, we don't. This is what's important." And he lights a lantern and says, "This is for my Uncle Zach, for my best friend Lexi," which is kind of awkward because Damon killed both of them. And he says, "And for a lark." And I feel like Stefan says this, "and for a lark," like he was never that close to a lark, but I feel like he says it for Damon because truthfully, Damon is really struggling with the loss of a lark and grieving his best friend, and he doesn't want to admit it. So I feel like Stefan in this moment is saying it for him, which is really sweet. Stefan then passes the lighter over to Matt, who lights his lantern and says, "This is for my sister, Vicky." And another awkward moment because Damon turned her and Stefan killed her. He then passes it over to Caroline, who says, "This is for my dad, and Tyler's," because Tyler can't be there because he's in the hospital. Jeremy then takes the lighter and gives out his list of people he's grieving, which is a lot. And he says, "This is for Vicky, and for Anna, and for Jenna, and for a lark, and for my parents." And he goes to hand the lighter over to Damon, and Damon's like, "Nah, I'm not doing this," and then he leaves. But they keep going nonetheless because Bonnie grabs it and says, "This is for my Grams," because she's struggling with that too. And then she gives it to Elena, everyone's looking at her, and Elena grabs a lantern and says, "This is for my mom, my dad, Jenna, everyone that you've all lost, everyone that this town has lost. And for me, I guess. Oh, I kind of hate that they made Elena say that there. It's a little self-involved because technically Caroline's died, Stefan's died, Damon's died. I just wish they didn't do it. It was a bit much. Also, I would have liked if she listed off Isabel and John because I feel like that was still impactful on her both parents. But anyway, I digress. They all let their lanterns float into the sky and watch them. And it's a very beautiful, touching scene. And it's really nice to acknowledge everyone that we've lost throughout the show because it was a lot of people. And I would like to list out a couple people that they didn't mention. Anna's mom, Pearl, love that queen. Rose, oh my God, miss you forever and ever. Those two mamas, they were gone too soon. And it's just nice to have this moment as well because there's so many deaths that we haven't had time to process because there's been so much going on. Like we sort of processed Alarc's death before he became full-blown Dark Alarc, but still, like he's officially gone now. And also processing what Elena's been through. Like she died in the way that she almost died and her parents actually did die going off of Wickery Bridge. So I think that's what they were kind of hinting at with the whole like, and for me, but it just doesn't quite hit the same. She could have been like, and for my human self, my past life, I don't know, something like along those lines, but I digress. We then have our final scene over at the cemetery with Damon sitting on a bench with a bottle of bourbon talking to Alarc's tombstone. And this is such a beautiful monologue by Damon, performed by Ian Somerhalder. I actually performed this monologue when I was pursuing acting a couple years ago, so maybe I'll include it at the end of this. We'll see. So Damon says, "They're floating lanterns in the sky.
You believe that?
A Japanese lantern is the symbol of letting go of the past. Well, here's a news flash.
We're not Japanese.
Do you know what they are? Children. Like lighting a candle is going to make everything okay, or even saying a prayer, or
Pretending Elena's not going to end up just like the rest of us, murderous vampires.
stupid, delusional, exasperating little children. I know what you're going to say. It makes them feel better, Damon.
So what? And for how long? What difference does it make?
Because in the end, when you lose somebody,
Every candle, every prayer is not going to make up for the fact that
That all you have left in your life is a hole where that somebody you cared about used to be. And a rock with a birthday carved into it that I'm pretty sure is wrong. So thanks, friend.
And we then see Alarc's ghost sitting on the bench listening to Damon from beyond the grave on the other side. And Damon continues saying,
Thanks for leaving me here to babysit.
because I should be long gone by now. I didn't get the girl, remember? I'm just stuck here fighting with my brother and taking care of the kids.
You owe me big.
Damon takes a final swig from his bourbon bottle and places it on Alarc's tombstone and walks away. And Alarc remains sitting on the bench and says,
I miss you too, buddy.
and that's the end of the episode. It was such an emotional episode. It was just having Elena dealing with her transition in the beginning of the episode, like what's going on between her, Damon, and Stefan, you know, like the intense action at the church, and there's this emotional ending talking about the loss and everyone that we've lost throughout the show and just everyone catching up to that grief. It was really amazing. And these last two episodes have been such an amazing transitional moment for these characters and for the show. Like I said in the beginning of this video, it feels very transitional of us transitioning from season 3 into season 4, but also, like I said, transitions within the show. Like I feel like season 1 to 3 is like chapter 1 of the show. Season 4, 5, and 6 is chapter 2. So I feel like we were like transitioning into that. I feel like, how many times can I use the word transition? But anyway, guys, that's it for me in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really do. I know that I only covered 2 episodes in this video, but as you can probably tell by the length of the video and everything I had to say, I had a lot of thoughts. I wanted to give them justice. The chapters throughout the season are going to vary in size. You know, we're going to have probably the beginning chapter be 2 episodes and the final chapter be 2 episodes because there's just more to talk about in the beginning and the end, you know? And then throughout the season, we'll have some chapters that are 3 episodes, some chapters that are 4 episodes, just really focusing on the overarching arcs. I just feel like as the show goes on, there's so much more to discuss because there's so much about the characters and the relationships and the lore and the mythology like stacking up on top of each other. And I realized in the past I was so focused on being succinct and doing like, you know, the recap and everything, especially in season 1 and 2. And with doing season 3 and having 5 parts for that season, I realized how much I enjoy really going in depth and not holding back and being able to talk as much as I can. You know, I even regret not talking more and delving in deeper into season 1 and 2 because I can't go back and do that, you know? So I just want to be able to enjoy these moments and discuss it as much as I can because the show means so much to me. And making these videos means a lot to me, and I appreciate you all so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy these videos. If you did enjoy this one, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below your thoughts, any and every thought. I would love to hear. I always respond and like the comments. I want to, you know, discuss the episodes with you guys. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on the post notifications bell so you don't miss another video from me, especially another Vampire Diaries video, because I have more coming, of course. And if you want more Vampire Diaries videos from me where we can delve deeper, you can go over to my Patreon, where I react to pivotal scenes from the show and delve deeper into the characters and their relationships. So you can check that out with the link in the description. And once again, thank you so much to the sponsor of this video, Magic Mind. If you click the link down below or go to magicmind.com/LukeXR or use code LukeXR20, it gets you up to 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days or 20% off a one-time purchase. Alrighty guys, that's it for me in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. And as always, I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. Bye!